Welcome to another episode of Homebrews in Focus, an episodic commentary series where we take a look at released homebrews with their developers. This time, welcoming is MT, and we'll be looking at the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure Series. Thanks for joining me, MT.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
That's great to hear. I've been looking forward to this as well. Before we kind of dive into it, I figured we'll do a couple introduction questions and then kind of get to the commentary.
Of course.
So, can you give the viewers some information about yourself?
So I'm MT. That's my pseudonym. I've been doing video game work under for the last handful of years. If it's not obvious visually, I'm a teacher, art teacher, and let's see. I got into like the NES homebrew scene, I guess, around like sometime between like 2012 and 2014. Just kind of looking for a creative outlet outside of what I was doing. That was like outside of what I was doing that was intended for students to see.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Yeah, you've been really active in the community, and we'll kind of talk about some of your other projects later. But let's talk a little bit about the Cowlitz Gamers Series. How did you get involved into it? And then two, what is the series about?
Well, let's see. I had just finished cover art for Swords and Runes, if I recall correctly. I think I just finished it. Maybe I was still working on it. I don't know. But that was a little behind me, and I was itching for something else to draw. And at the time, John Hancock, who I would later discover is a relatively well-known YouTube personality, had posted on Nintendo Age looking for cover art for a charity project. Mm-hmm. Since it was for charity, I jumped on it. At that time, I wasn't looking for another paying gig. I had been doing like commission work previously, and I was looking for something a little more freeform and lower pressure. So, it was for charity. No one was profiting off of it. At the time, I wasn't even really concerned what the charity was, although it was a very good one. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, yeah, I'll do it. So,
and as kind of went on, you kind of got more involved into it as well.
I did. So, I hadn't known Lucas previously. He's the programmer of the series, by the way, and actually, humorously, so the first Cowlitz Gamers adventure. I don't know if you're familiar with a series of homebrew called Micro Night.
Yep.
You know them? Okay. Well, of course, yeah. but they don't really get a lot of talk outside of like the few threads that the author runs on the NES forums. So the NES forum poster that had been posting the Micro Night series is called SDM. Mm-hmm. That's his username. Their username. And so the first Cowlitz adventure looked really, really similar to it. So I had just immediately assumed that Lucas and SDM were the same person. Mm. So when I started talking to Lucas, I think I had referenced it. I was like, oh, I had seen your other game, Micro Night. And he was just like, that's not my game. It turned out the similarity was justifiable, though. I would later learn that Lucas was mentoring SDM, so he was giving him like some template projects and stuff like that for him to build upon, and so there is a connection there, and you see that in one of the stage titles in the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure too. Now I forgot what you asked. So
that's all good.
That was a good question for me.
It was good background, but I was wondering. So the first game comes out, or the first one's announced, and you get involved doing the illustration and the box design, the manual, and then you, as I understand it, you kind of pushed for the sequels, and you took a larger development role in those. Is that right?
I have, for better or for worse, I have this habit of whatever whatever property I'm working on, or playing, or whatever I'm into at the time, I can't help but want to see what it would look like if I were to design it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had a Twitter thread of these a couple of years back, or earlier last year or something, where I had posted all these mock-ups. Whereas like I did a mock-up of what it would be like if I were to redesign the incident, or what it would be like if I were to redesign Swords and Runes and stuff like that. So, while I'm working on the Cowlitz series, the cover art for the first one, I couldn't help but mock up what it would look like if I were to design a sequel to it. And the cover art for the first one, the cover art is very much, I'm self-indulgent in it being like really detailed and really far kind of off model from the in-game graphics, which are like 8-bit, or not 8-bit, like 8 pixel sprites. They're like single sprites, so they're really small. So everything got kind of blown up and detail added. So in that aspect, the cover art for the first game ended up being the visual inspiration for the mock-up for the second.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure at the time how involved John Hancock had been in it. So I pitched it to him, and he was just like, "Yeah, if you want to go with it, go with it." Talk to Lucas, and I pitched it to Lucas, and I figured, especially because I hadn't seen other stuff he's done, so I didn't know how like talented he was at the time, because the first Cowlitz is intentionally a very simple game. So I thought I might have been asking the world of him by sending him this larger mock-up that's looks like Lode Runner if Lode Runner had come out like 5 years later.
Yeah.
But he was just like, he was like, "That looks great. Put together whatever you want to put together for it, and we'll make it." And that was basically his response to like every suggestion I had. I guess we'll talk a little about it later with level design, but
yeah.
When I had done that, I'd kind of like, I didn't want to step on toes. He had done the level design in the first one, and then suddenly, we get down to it, and we got all the graphics made, and we've got something put together, and he's just like, "Okay, well, send me all the levels." I hadn't done level design yet, but we'll talk about that more once we see some of the levels on the screen, I reckon.
Yeah, we will. So I guess we should talk about who the other team members were, and it more or less remained the same, with you taking a larger role in the beginning. John Hancock, as far as kind of pushing for a charity project, Lucas doing the programming, Robi, I think it's Robi or Robbie, I'm not sure which one it is.
It's short for Robert, so I've been going with Robbie, but I've never, I don't hear a lot of usernames out loud, so I'm guilty of mispronouncing them sometimes. Robbie, he's great. Yeah, and
then Chip Jockey for some of them.
And Chip Jockey came in on the second one, and we can introduce his stuff once the tower hits, because that's when his music kind of kicks in, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
really excited with him. With the music from the first one, I just kind of felt we'd be reusing the stuff for the first one, because again, I didn't want to ask people to make new stuff. I didn't want to ask Robbie to make new music and stuff. And but he was, I guess we're all just kind of like itching to create. He's just like, "Oh, that mock-up looks great. Let me put together some music for it." And then he put together this music that, similarly, like, is leagues more complex than the first title's music, even though we do keep one of the tracks from the first title in the second.
Okay, I think as far as the game plan, I think we'll take a look at Cowlitz Gamers Adventure 2, or sorry, second adventure first. That gives a really good look at the project, and especially what a lot of your talents brought to it. And then we'll take a look at the first one, and then Lost Adventure.
Yeah, that sounds ideal.
Okay, let's get into it. So I guess this is playing, and it shows the people involved.
Right.
I'm playing all these games on the normal difficulty, but there are numerous different options as far as the difficulty that impacts points and other criteria. You wanna talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we put in 4 difficulties, easy to ace, as was briefly shown there, and at the time I had really wanted the exact same experience to be there for everybody. So the difficulty doesn't change the level layout, it doesn't change the enemies, it doesn't change anything like that. It changes score, which I had greatly. What would I say? I greatly overestimated. I greatly overestimated how important score was. Outside of the homebrew players competitions, those are like the only time anyone talks about score. but the difficulty basically just affects score. Because your score resets when you game over, and the difficulty makes it easier to get more lives. With less gold collected, and it awards more score for things at the higher level. The only real difference is ace, which doesn't allow continues, and it doesn't allow any extra lives. So functionally, that's really the only different one. But you could self-impose the ace difficulty by just making yourself do it 1 credit, 1 continue, or whatever.
Yeah. I guess before it gets too far into the game, just kind of talk about the context of it because it's already playing. So the premise of this one is you're collecting money for fireworks. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, that was the brief 1-page description from the first one as well. So I just kind of stuck with it for the second one. Personally, I don't like fireworks. They're loud and they're smelly. I didn't like them when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I have no qualms with them being in the game. So I just stuck with it.
I kind of appreciate just the short kind of context to it. Like a lot of story is not needed for every project, and it kind of lets you just jump right into it and start playing. Right,
and same with like Project Blue. I use the manual to kind of flesh out some other stuff. So stuff that's totally not necessary to enjoy the game.
And while you're playing this, it's a puzzle platformer, I guess you'd say, and you don't have any attacks or anything. You're basically trying not to get hit by anything, and you can kind of manipulate the environment for certain things. Like there's falling spikes that you can kill enemies with them. Certain ones you need to collect. There's a set amount of gold pieces in every level,
right?
And you can move on to the next one after you get those gold pieces, and then there's also some hidden diamonds as well.
Right, 1 in each screen.
Yeah, and some of them are very difficult to find, and in these recordings, I'm not going to find most of them.
Of course.
But there is a benefit to collecting the diamonds, and you'll see that in the video later.
Yes.
So this was I guess let's talk about the level design, because in this one you took that role on for most of the levels, I think.
Yeah, I think I did all of them for this one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did all of them for this one. So the first Cowlitz had 8 levels in it, and they looped a few times, each time with a few more enemies. So what I did, which again, this was my first time doing level design, so I was really I felt a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep the feel of the first one, and what I did is I adapted those 8 stages first, and they'd require some changes because in the first one you could spawn anywhere, so the layout would need to be changed so that the starting point is at the spawn place. So those became every 3rd level in the mines. So it'd be like stage 3, 6, 9, etc. Then the other stages, a few of them, I just copied levels. My first, the very first one was just there's just 3 or 4 platforms and the little slug enemies. That was my attempt at that first Bubble Bobble stage where you've got the 3 or 4 platforms and the little Tinker Toy robots or whatever. There's one stage back actually. It's in this green palette. It's a stage or two back. It's actually my favorite stage in the game. But it's the second stage of Donkey Kong, flipped horizontally to try to hide that it's the second stage of Donkey Kong. Which, the Donkey Kong has like the elevators and stuff instead of the vine, so it's not immediately obvious. But in one of the early reviews that we had from I forget which one. I think it was one of the European reviews that came out of it. They posted something like, they made a comparison to Donkey Kong and they happened to use a screenshot of that stage, and I felt suddenly very seen.
I didn't even realize that.
I don't think most would. I think it's because the enemy placement ends up different and stuff. I don't think most would make that connection. So if they happen to have noticed it, then kudos on them. But I felt it might have been a coincidence, and I just felt, guilty. I don't know. So a few stages were like that. So that was I spent like a week just digging through all these single screen platformers, trying to find stages that I thought were fun and figure out why they were fun. Other than that, I did. There are these two blog posts. I guess they must be quite old by now because they were old then. But it's like 11 tips for making a good platformer or something, and then like 11 more tips for making a good platformer. And one of them had introduced the idea of doing level design by charting a route first. So you'd be like, do this. The level design would start, and you're just like, so here's my area, and I was doing this on graph paper, so it looked kind of like this.
Yeah.
You got that? We got any video on that? Let's see here. But it'd be a route, and it'd be like, oh, I want the character to do this. And you just make some crazy route there. Yeah. And then you just kind of fill in the stuff around the route. It's just like this part of it'll be climbing, and this part of it'll be ropes, and this part of it'll be jumping, So that was one of the that was probably like my primary method, I guess. I found that fun to do. Definitely made some other game design flaws during the time though.
Yeah.
Introducing, there's one here, this yellow slug, right?
Yeah, it took me a couple times to figure out how to there it shows.
So you've got it there. You've got it by there. You ducked, and it jumped over you. But I totally failed to introduce them in a way that forces you to learn that. Especially since when you take a death, you just respawn, but you keep your collected items, so you can continue progressing. So like the first couple of yellow slugs are easy to avoid, and then the next ones are hard to avoid, but they're just set up to where it's easy to take a death and continue. So we'd be watching, when people started streaming this, I watched someone stream this, and they're on stage 40 something. And it's not until stage 40 something that there's one that you actually have to physically get past to collect a gold. Yeah. And they had made it that far, and they still hadn't gotten the ducking mechanic down, which means that I totally failed in introducing it. I guess we'll talk about it more when Lost comes up, but I tried to fix it with Lost because I knew a lot of people would be playing that for the first time. Yeah. So I wanted to force that introduction. Let's just get into it now. So I wanted to force that introduction. So when the Lost stage comes up, I'll draw attention to it. But I set it up so where you come up on one side and you physically have to get across the screen to the other side, past a yellow slug to get to the ladder. And we had a problem, one of the few big coding problems we had. I wouldn't say coding, but design problems we had was getting the yellow slug to where it couldn't be jumped over. Yeah. So it has, we couldn't get the arc right and where it starts right to where it just nails you every time you try to jump over it. So then we ended up just adding a totally second jump animation. So it's got an arc jump animation, and then it's got this flounder jump animation where it jumps straight up like a fish out of water, in case it detects you higher than where it would normally be detecting you. So we put in two totally different jumps just to compensate for the fact it could be jumped over. But there's no place in Cowlitz's second adventure where there's a yellow slug and there's just nothing around you. Yeah. So what we didn't know is that it can totally be jumped over. From what we would later find out from the streams would be like the most common place you would expect to jump if there were no other obstructions.
Yeah.
So suddenly I had this Lost introduction. Lost came out a few years after this. This had been bugging me for a few years. I hated every time I watched someone play it. Like, it just reminds me how I failed to introduce it correctly. I had been sketching out ways to do it. And finally I get it in there, and we have that blind race stream. I don't remember if it happened in the blind race because those guys had all played Cowlitz second, but definitely it happened when we did the video game Sage high score competition.
Yeah, that's how I learned.
Definitely just watched someone
mechanic.
jump over it. And I was just like, no! My life goal destroyed in front of me. But yeah, so, yellow slugs, often considered the biggest pain to the players, but they're twice the pain to me as they are to any player, I assure you.
Like all before, I would just take the death until we played the video game Sage homebrew competition, and then we played on ace difficulty because that's what gave you the most points. And if you die once, that's it. So then had to learn, how do I make it past it without taking a death? Up until that point, I just took the death. So
yeah, and like I said, I wanted the game to be low stakes and easy to get into, and actually the game's quite hard. I
would say not as hard as the first one.
Hard. Right. Yeah. And I can't beat the second stage in the first one. There's a particular jump I can't beat. I actually ended up that's way back here. It's on like stage 6 here. But I ended up taking that exact same jump I couldn't beat, and I set it as the path to the diamond. So I imitated the exact blade layout, and then it's the path to the diamond. So it's totally optional on going up. But also with collision in this one, those kind of jumps aren't as hard, because the first one is single sprites, and I don't want to speak for Lucas, but I think that the collision's also 8 pixels. So the hitboxes are the same size as the enemies and stuff. But with this one, we definitely tried to intentionally replicate good design. Things that you should be easy to grab should have slightly larger hitboxes. Things that you should be avoiding should have slightly smaller. I see it sometimes, especially when people release like early versions of their games. Like early version of this, our collision boxes were 16 pixels and it was unplayable. But you never want a situation to where as the developer, that character takes up 16 pixels, but the player sees 12 pixels of character. You don't want those side pixels.
This is the bonus.
Bonus stage, yeah.
If you collect 8 diamonds, you get put in one of these bonus stages.
Right. So we have the bonus stages. There are, I guess, 48? There are 6 of these. And which one you get to is based on what stage you're in when you collect the 8th one. So I think it was you that was talking to me when you first got to this one. Didn't know to wait for gold to spit out of those turtles.
Climbed right up that rope, and I'm like, what do I do?
It's just like, they're turtles. They're going to be spitting. I got to get out of here. I hadn't anticipated that being the first one someone would see, but it makes sense that it would be if you're just collecting the diamonds kind of casually. Like you'd eventually get 8, But the early ones, it's just like that bubble screen where it's just it's a bunch of flowers everywhere. Yeah, I guess they're flowers. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to do with it. Almost all the game design choices here are when we didn't know how to do things, we were just like, how does Bubble do it? And we did it that way.
Yeah.
So if you were to be experiencing them on the way up, you'd see the first one's just gold, and the second one's gold in this layout, and the next one's gold in this layout. So suddenly you get to one and there's no gold, then I guess a player would hang out and wait to see what happens. But yeah, those turtles spit gold. Yeah.
So as the game progresses, the levels get more difficult, and the tower is more difficult, but we haven't even gotten to the more difficult levels. And I wanted to ask you, because as the game progresses before the tower, it switches the palette. They're kind of grouped in kind of like worlds per se. How did you, in development, how did you balance when you were making the levels to arrange them in the correct way with the correct palette? So say you made 20 or 40 levels, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, this one goes here, but it's not difficult as isn't the right difficulty, or did you kind of switch the palettes to arrange them? How did you go about that?
Well, the way our maps are stored for this game, they're stored in groups of 6. Yeah, they're stored in groups of 6 because that's where the palettes swap. And I would never want to manually copy and paste one map from one section to another. I don't remember if we did. I do remember opening up a hex editor and moving some stuff around that way. So I might have done it once or twice, but mostly what I did is I built the stages on graph paper first. I kind of had an idea and I started loading them in with some intentional, like, this one's going to be here and this one's going to be there. Yeah. But then when it came time to balance difficulty level, we did that mostly with enemy placement and stuff like that. So the stages, we didn't move around too much after they were built, but we would control how many enemies are in each one to give that ramp. As for the palettes, for the mines, I knew I wanted that brown palette to be default, the one that people always see when they start. Then I made a ton of different palettes to see which ones look cool. Narrowed it down to a few of them, and then put them in order of just preference, I guess. Like you go into the green ones and the red ones. Like I like the red one because it's kind of like it's a wild. My palette file is named Red Velvet for that. So it's this kind of wild color that you wouldn't normally expect. It
is the most vibrant of it. It does really show through.
And it has a couple of level designs that are kind of bold as well. Like the one where there's like just a bunch of teleporters in different rooms and you're going around. Yeah. So I think some of that stuff ended up working out, but it wasn't intentional. The tower is different though. The tower I wanted to have the sun setting as you're going up, which the clouds in the background and stuff on those side stripes.
I'd say yeah.
I've got this like faux, I don't know if you'd call it parallax because it's vertical. I don't know if that word applies there, but they move down at a slower rate than what the front one does. And it eventually starts like at the beginning, you can see like the water and stuff behind it, and then the clouds move down and eventually gets to the stars and stuff. So this was just me doing a sunset palette as it goes up into evening.
I appreciate that, like kind of context beyond what's happening in the level. And when you get the lost, you do something there too. We'll talk about that. We'll show it later, but you use some snow effects onto the screen.
Right. Oh, this stage is Morse code.
Oh.
It's a lot of stages. I started running out of ideas. So that's Morse code, and it tells you exactly where the trigger for the diamond is, even though you're going to hit it anyway. Do I just play in it? I like this one. This one's really fun. I like to watch the way people started tackling it with speedruns and stuff, because you got to wait for the turtle and the chandelier to kind of line up with each other there.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised, and I guess I should have expected it, but I was kind of surprised when people were having difficulty with the first time there's a gold and a turtle. They'd collect all the gold, and in my eye, the first stage that we introduced the turtle that had eaten the gold. If you collect all the gold, it's got a little flash above them, like it flashes a little bit. So I would just assume that the player would be like, "Oh, I've collected all the gold. There's something else I need." But I forget that we're amateur game developers. So the first response people have when they collect all the gold, they're just like, "Oh, we collected all the gold and it's not progressing. It must be a glitch."
Oh, okay.
So that's something that I try to keep in mind. Like, people don't have the same expectations of independent developers and homebrew developers that they do of like professionally released stuff. Like if it happens in a game that you buy at a store, and like you get a cart, then you're going to try to figure out, okay, there's something that I missed here.
Yeah.
But when it's us and we made it, and it's just a few dudes making it, and there a few folks making it in their spare time or whatever, and something doesn't click immediately, then it's kind of easy to just jump to it must be a bug the developers didn't catch type thing.
Yeah.
So I try to keep that in mind with some of the other design choices I've made on games since then, to try to communicate intention better, I guess would be an easier way to say it. That's my Prince of Persia jump. That's the furthest you can possibly jump and grab a rope, and I was real proud of it. And then in actual gameplay, when I see people play it, it's nothing. It's just a jump. You just jump and grab the rope.
All the mechanics of the game work really well, and it gets a lot of praises. The only one I personally have trouble with, and it might just be me, is jumping off of ropes. Because I think I want to hold up,
right?
And you can't. You have to perform your function first, like I think it's A, and then you can press the D-pad. And so sometimes you'll see, if you kind of inspect it, I'll struggle to either jump. I'll struggle to jump off of ropes.
Oh, of course. And that was some feedback we got on our demo release too, which I don't really know how similar mechanics work in other games, but the way that Lucas has it set up to work here is, if you're holding up, you're grabbing, and that takes priority over everything else. So that's why it happens that way.
Yeah.
So it takes a bit. That gets talked about a lot in the Cove speed runs of it, because you end up being able to climb the ropes faster by releasing up, jumping, and pressing up again to grab at the peak of your jump.
Oh, okay.
So especially when they're playing with like their clicky controllers and stuff, you can kind of detect them doing that going up. Oh, I said I designed all the levels for this particular level. The enemy layout that I had for it was terrible. I had these zombies just walking down those things. It was another wait for zombies to come down level, and it was really not fun. One wait for zombies to come down level was enough, and I couldn't come up with anything for it. So I asked Lucas if he could come up with something, and he did that enemy level, or the enemy layout for that level, and it's really fun. Especially the brown turtles, how you have to wait for them to drop down to get stuff on the sides. Yeah.
So one aspect is, and I think we've talked about this before, and it's one of the difficult natures of, I guess, doing level design, is not boxing people in to make one solution.
Right.
How do you go about that? And I would imagine it's difficult to think about multiple ways you can do something.
Sometimes it was intentional, but often it was not. I said I had drawn routes to do things, but this game has to be beatable. Like one of our design goals is it has to be beatable if you're playing as player 2 only. So if you play as a 2-player game and player 1 dies on stage 1, then you have to be able to beat the whole game from the player 2 starting position, which, it seems easy, but that's when you're thinking about levels like Bubble Bobble, where you can get anywhere in a level with no problem by jumping on bubbles, But with this, when we do our routes, we do the route for the player 1, and then I'd go in and I'd put a route for a player 2. I'd try to balance symmetrical levels and asymmetrical levels to where there'd be like a few symmetrical levels, but not many. I really wanted asymmetrical, so playing as player 2 was a different experience. So as a result, what happens is when you're playing through on the player 1 route, there are many times you can jump over to what we had originally intended for the player 2 route. So having multiple solutions to these was going to be inevitable because of that. Yeah. But still, especially with the speedrunners and stuff, I see a lot of solutions come up that I definitely not anticipated. Like, I talked about the wait for the zombies level. I had always intended that to be a wait for a zombies level. You just wait for them to come down. And again, that was overestimating the importance of score, because when an enemy perishes, you get a score, and it increases for each enemy on the screen. So you get a lot of score when those zombies come down, but we don't really communicate that well with like sound effects or flashing or anything. So no one really notices that the score is increasing there. So it ends up being kind of boring waiting for them. But early on in the speedrun community, they had routed a way to get past those zombies, and even very recently, Sir Phobos, who's taken the lead on it, I believe he initiated this extremely aggressive move to get past it even faster, which is really interesting to watch people do.
Yeah, because their whole thing is time. They don't care about the score or anything. They care about time.
So it's nice to see people with different goals than what you'd anticipated tackle the game, because you see them do it in a different way.
Yeah. And you just brought up speedrunning, and this all of the games actually have been really embraced by the speedrunning community, and it's been run at Games Done Quick. Did you always target these games to be for speedrunners? I've heard them mention tight controls, global timing. What's the story behind that?
I didn't know what speedrunning was. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
I knew tool-assisted speedrunning was a thing, but I didn't know like speedrunning competitively was a thing. I guess that's part of being old. But so when it got picked up, it was a surprise to me, and they started talking about things that made it really good for speedrunning, the lack of random numbers and stuff like that. So I'm more considerate of it now, but I wasn't then. So it was just accidental that it came up then. There we go, fireworks. These were fun to animate. I took a photograph of a firework exploding and color reduced it so that it could animate with the palette there. I really liked that. That was fun.
So we never really got talked about the music during this, but I kind of give, I think in this one, I give an opportunity when I play the tracks, but...
Oh, great.
As you progress, also, the music kind of gets intense, like, because you're...
Right.
That's a nice feature. And so this tracks, I kind of catch that there's this influence from other NES games, intentional or not. I kind of heard, I don't know if you could speak about this because you weren't the chiptune artist, but it seemed like there was some Batman the video game influences. There's probably some others that I didn't pick up on.
I'm not well versed in music, but I definitely noticed, because we have music from two different authors, Robi and Chip Jockey. Initially, Robi was going to work on the whole thing, and initially the game was just going to end after 24 stages in the mines, and the game started feeling like a higher quality product than what we had planned. So I asked if we could double the length of it. And Lucas, as he had responded with everything else, like when I asked for co-op, he's just like, yeah, no problem. So, he's just like, yeah, you make more stages and I'll do it. So then I came up with the visual theme for the tower. I'm just like, well, if we're climbing up and like our depth is decreasing every time, then it might be cool. You'd expect the game to finish at 0, and then suddenly it's not finished at 0, and there's this whole other thing.
Yeah.
But then, that was doubling the ask for music of Robi. And he's, if I recall correctly, he was a student at the time. His time, is most of our time. We don't have a lot of free time. So he wanted to get like the titles, he wanted to get 3 or 4 good tracks down to begin with. And it was taking him some time to do that. We had 1 at that time, and we had looked into bringing in some open game art music, Oz Run and Pun soundtrack, and we had already mapped all those to stages. So if you're curious about that, we've got that on the page. You can kind of see what that would be. A lot of those songs are pretty well recognized now because they show up in like Super Tilt Bros and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Chip Jockey and Robi both had worked with Lucas on a game previous to this called Electro Body 2, an unofficial sequel to this title which all three of these members are Polish, Łukasz, Robi, and Chip Jockey, a title that had apparently to me been popular in Poland or Eastern Europe at the time, well, at their time, early 90s or whatever. So it's this kind of like, it's for PCs or something. It's this like RoboCop knockoff, and they were doing this unofficial sequel to it for this game jam, and then they were going to branch it off into a whole thing, and they had a whole soundtrack already made for it. And Łukasz reached out to Chip Jockey and was like, "Do you mind if we use these tracks for it?" And they're really good, just as good as Robi's, and they fit well with each other, but they have a distinctly different feel. Like they are more intense because they were made for an action game. So assigning those to the tower really just like it takes it to this whole other stage of like increased like doom. When the tower loads, there's like all these enemies and there's chandeliers or something. Like you get really there and it's all this new stuff, and then that music just kicks in. And when people are streaming it, especially for their first time streaming it, listening to them like respond and react to that, it feels good. And I think in terms of influence, their music probably has some similarity because they are both Polish. So the exposure of the NES in Poland is really different than what it would have been in North America or in Japan. It didn't come there until later, like 90 or 91 is the Pegasus. So like I've noticed from other Polish developers, there's not a lot of love for the early titles, like the pre-90 titles, because they were mostly filler on these multi-carts. So you get huge love for like Contra and stuff, and then like the Codemasters had a big presence there. So Łukasz officially works with the Oliver twins on their Dizzy releases these days.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because the re-releases of like the unreleased Dizzy titles, there have been like 1 or 2 or 3 of them so far. So Łukasz does the programming for getting those ready for release. So he does like the official work for that, and he has access to their source and stuff. So he learns a lot of stuff from it, and it really works well for him because I definitely couldn't imagine anyone being a bigger fan of any like title or series than he is of Dizzy. So when he talks about it, it's obviously like it's his dream come true. He's doing programming on official Dizzy titles for the NES.
That's great to hear because Łukasz, and you've worked with him on Gurney Zerka as well.
Right.
Great game, great series as well, and he also did Lucky Penguin.
With MacB.
Yeah. So that's great.
Yeah. So in the music, the Electro Body soundtrack, there was actually a track where Robi and Chip Jockey had worked together. And I thought it would be amazing to include in here because it would be like the transition between whatever difference in their styles would be. But we didn't because it, as you're bringing up influence from other stuff, if I recall, I definitely recall that it is a cover of something or includes something, and I think it's like the Power Rangers theme song. So if you look it up through Chip Jockey's page, maybe it's the Electro Body 2 soundtrack, and there's one track where Robi and Chip Jockey work together.
Yeah,
I think it's a Power Rangers theme song that's in there. I wouldn't recognize it, but I was told, so we couldn't include that. But here, the diamond. The diamond shows which author does which track as you go through the BGM, which including BGMs on the credit scene is something that I really like to do in games. I like to make sure that the musicians are getting the exposure, that people can listen to their music, and it essentially makes the games also like an album cart. You can throw it in and get to the credit screen and just play these tracks.
It's appreciated in a lot of games that you can't. In this game, the levels are timed. It's fast paced. You have to avoid enemies. So like you can be like, oh, this is really great, but you can't like fully appreciate it in the moment sometimes because of the intensity of the game. So it's great to dive into it later and say, well, let me play them again.
Absolutely. which this game gets so much praise for its music, and I'm really glad that it does, because it's definitely worthy of it.
So, besides people's general feedback from the game, which everything I've seen is very positive, John Hancock, which we mentioned in the beginning, he gave a lot of praise to you, especially when the game was released.
Right.
Did that have an impact on you? You know, how did you feel
generous.
about that?
He's generous. He's positive. I liked it, but it was mostly I was point of contact for John.
Yeah.
So I would talk to Lucas. Lucas would talk to Chip Jockey and Robi, and then I would talk to John. So as a result, I'm imagining from John's perspective, my involvement is overstated. Absolutely. So, I designed stuff, but I couldn't get any of this running or working, and it's absolutely a team effort. I would, always make sure that Lucas's name is credited before mine on anything we do, no matter how we balance the work, because the programming work's a lot more important for sure.
So we're gonna move on to First Adventure in a couple minutes.
Okay.
And we'll kind of take a look at that. And as we mentioned in the beginning, you were brought on in that sense, answering kind of an ad, for box design and illustration.
Right.
So we'll kind of see the differences in the game at that time.
It's nice to see the progression between them. I think Second Adventure is a really good introduction to the series.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's fun to see how it comes from First Adventure. But First Adventure is intentionally pretty simple. So, if you're introduced first through First Adventure, it may be a little difficult to get into Second.
All right, quick costume change and we're back. So MT, before we jump into the gameplay commentary of First Adventure, I was thinking if you can give a little bit of summary about the project, kind of the origins of it.
Well, I didn't join this until after it was already done, and they were looking for cover art and stuff. But afterwards, obviously Lucas and I talked about it quite a bit while we were working on the sequels. So how this started, Lucas was was or is a member of some forums, and it was like a forum project. So it was small. It was based off of like one of the forums, like personalities or user handles or whatever. But it was intentionally designed to fit into 8K. So it was like his personal project. His goal was to make it as small as humanly possible. So he had this project kind of laying around, and I guess he had come across John Hancock looking for things to release for the Cowlitz Gamers for Kid Expo charity, and he had agreed or offered this up. And when they did, he and Robi, who had done the music for this, decided to bump it up from 8K to 16K, and that was
still
primarily still very small. That was primarily to let Robi expand on the music some. I find out later that this game's predecessor, before it got rebranded as the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure, was one in a series of titles, and we'll look at one of those after this video here.
Oh, that's great. Kind of see where it even came from before that.
Right.
All right. So if there's nothing else, we'll jump into the gameplay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're at the title screen, and this has a couple options in it before you jump in. If you want to talk about that, I think that you had a hand in that, right?
Just a little bit. So it has these color options, where it has like different color modes, and they're basically just different palettes for the game.
Mm-hmm.
When I had gotten the ROM, it had one I think it was just called Black and White, or maybe I renamed it Old TV. I don't remember exactly what happened there. Or it was Old TV and renamed it Black and White. But it had a Virtual Boy one and a Game Boy one. And the Virtual Boy one was like red on black, which has that Virtual Boy look. But the Game Boy one's like green on black. And not a lot of like Game Boy titles really had a black background, Yeah. If you think of like your Mario lands and stuff. So while I was working on the cover art for this, I just opened it up and edited the palette and put together a palette with a light background. Thought it was a little more Game Boy looking. So I'd pitched that. Oh, the stream's been going. There we go.
I'll loop back so we can kind of talk at the back.
It just updated on my end, but yeah, there we go. So there's Game Boy. So I put together that Game Boy palette.
Okay.
And I guess that was the first time I pitched anything to Lucas in terms of like editing games and stuff.
Yeah.
So this screen here is kind of like this is what I consider like the ideal Cowlitz screen. It gets remade into stage 3 of the next one, and then later I find it in the predecessor. It's probably like the most recognizable, at least to me, because I've seen it a lot. This is the reason I had thought that this and Micronite were from the same developer. Micronite had already been in the works a bit, so Lucas just kind of put this little nod to SDM's Micronite here. That's that jump. That jump's terrible. I can't make that jump.
And I don't want to oversell myself. This game, to me, is a lot more brutal as far as difficulty, the first one. And this one, I had to use save states to capture something that we can talk about. just to test this game before doing the art. That was really the only one that gave me a huge problem, but I was having to drop my emulation speed down to a ridiculous amount so that I could squeeze between those. Yeah, big difference between here and the next one is that here, once you collect everything, then the screen's finished. Yeah. So with the next one, you have to then get to the exit rope. So that really changed a lot of the level design. I think there's 1 or 2 of these, like once you get to the last goal, you can't get back to the previous area or something. Yeah. A lot of the concepts... Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of the concepts are here in the first one. The physics are a little different. The enemy patterns are a little different, but you still have your rope climbs, your vines. You're still kind of collecting the gold. It still has those secret pickups. So it's kind of the basis is here.
Yeah, when designing the sequel, like its gameplay and stuff, we just wanted to keep everything pretty much the same, but bigger, Yeah. Even the way the secrets are, I've seen them referred to as pixel hunting. Before we get to that, so this stage, Leap of Faith, these stages have stage names, and this one's a hint to how you get the diamond. So, it just means you jump to something that would be your death. And when I was designing the levels for the second one, I had kind of, I don't know, I didn't really expect people to play the second one that hadn't played the first one, even though, like only a few dozen people had a copy of the first one. So I didn't really think about the idea that people would be playing the second one first. Yeah. So when I adapted that stage, I kept that Leap of Faith in there. And what that means is that stage is the only stage in the second adventure where you have to do something that looks like it will kill you to get the switch for the diamond. And I really regret that. That's like my biggest regret in the game design there. Because everything else, like everywhere else, you can find the diamonds by just exploring. But with that one, you have to actually like do something that looks like it'll kill you. And I think that was poor design on my part. Which here, it worked because you had that hint at the bottom. Yeah. But in the sequel, we didn't have the titles, so it definitely didn't work there. Oh, what was I saying before I interrupted myself? I don't know. Anyway.
But this is one that this level makes it into the second one too, right?
Oh yes, all of them did. Okay. This one was fun because we put in one of the turtles. So we had that stalactite enemy interaction, which doesn't exist in this one. Like having the stalactites kill the enemies was an addition for the second. This one's not as easily recognizable in the second one because we need to exit from from the top in the second one. So I had to invert the top and bottom of this. So like the top half of this stage is the bottom. This is stage 24, I think, in the second one. Yeah, and then it goes back to the loop.
Yeah.
So each loop has more enemies. And you were asking earlier about making decisions for difficulty level. So especially with these, as they were spread out across the first half of the game, then like the number of enemies that are represented in the second one, that are also in the first one, it's kind of chosen like the earlier stages, they might not have the enemies that are in like the second or third loop, but the later ones might have extra ones. But mostly scanline issues restricted us a lot on that too, because these are single sprites, so you can get up to 8 enemies on a line. Well, 7 with a player. But with the second one, they're double wide, so you can only get like 3. But then we have 2 players, so that was pretty restrictive.
I think the remainder of this is just watching me die.
Good, yeah. That's the jump. It's so hard. So this is the one that I made into a breakaway of the diamond. So I moved it over to the right, and then there's like an area where the diamond spawns. So you have to get past that. It's quite a clever little pattern, the way those two are interacting with each other up there. And I think in the second one, because it's easier to kind of track the enemies, they're larger, maybe they move slower, or maybe they feel like they move slower because they're larger. It's easier to track it and see the opening for jumping through, especially because, more forgiving collision boxes and stuff. But even so, like, it's a challenge, so I made sure the player didn't have to do it to progress. It's just there for the diamond in the second one.
So after this, so we're gonna play the ZX Spectrum game. That's kind of the basis of the project. Do you want to talk a bit about that, and then we'll show that one?
Right. So I didn't really know this one existed earlier, and if I had, because it has some stages that didn't make it into Cowlitz. So if I had known it had existed, I would have adapted those stages into the second one, because I was pretty strapped for ideas on some of those. And it's one in many of the series. They call it the AE adventure. AE comes from the middle of one of the forum members' usernames, where it was like A_E. A was the end of one word, E was the beginning of the other. And it became a running joke that little A_E looked like a little face. So that's the only real thing that's there from that. And Lucas did like a text adventure game and did something for the C64 and some other stuff that was all in this like AE adventure. He had this like Nintendo DS demo he was working on and stuff. But this one I didn't know existed. And then well after second adventure was out, then it came up in conversation. And he just dropped it casually, like I had always known. And I was like, I didn't know that existed. You got to send that to me. Let me play that. And we went through, and at the time we were working on Action 53, and I thought it would be really cool to take these levels and kind of adapt them as a Cowlitz like spin-off or semi-sequel for that. So that'll be lost later. A fun thing about this one is it has a mechanic that's not in the other ones. It's a simple platforming mechanic. It's like the opposite of a platform. So normally you have the platform, you can like drop down.
The red
jump
ones.
up, it can't drop down, and then it's like the opposite. Like you can what is it?
Pass through.
Can jump up, yeah, something like that. We'll see it, I reckon. But
okay.
Yeah, we chose not to include that in Lost because we didn't want to introduce any possibility of like introducing new bugs we had to test for and fix.
Yeah, I can understand that. I have to find that text adventure one. That sounds interesting.
It's in Polish. I don't remember what system it was for. It may have been for the NES. Yeah.
All right, so let me pull up the gameplay and we'll start it off. There it is.
Yeah. So here it is. There's that iconic stage again. And I remember when I first loaded up this ROM, I got giddy seeing this. I was just like, oh, look. Especially because in First Adventure, it was, made with 8-pixel tiles. It was like at a totally different scale.
Yeah.
And then I scaled it to 16-pixel tiles for Second Adventure. And then I see here that it was originally 16-pixel to begin with. So I can kind of see like some of the choices that I made in scaling it up compared to what it was originally. So that was really fun for me.
It's odd as a player to kind of go back to the really older NES and then using up as jump.
Oh yeah, is that this? Is it up as jump for this? I don't remember.
Yeah. So at first I was playing this on a gamepad, which is not how you play the ZX Spectrum. And then when I figured out that, I'm like, okay, let me switch to a keyboard.
Yeah. So what's this? So the blue ones you can jump up through from the bottom, but you can't drop down from, if I remember correctly. And then the pink ones you can, or vice versa. It's one or the other. But we didn't include the pink ones in Lost. Adapting these was really quite fun, especially because some of like even though this is it's bigger and chunkier, like 16-inch pixel sprites, but some of the fidelity to this stuff is like some of the stuff is only 8 pixels tall. So getting like these staircases to work in the Lost sequel was an interesting challenge. There was also in this one there are a lot of symmetrical stages. And I think I mentioned before, I'm not a huge fan of symmetrical stages. So what I did for some of them is I would take 2 different stages and like 2 symmetrical stages, and I'd take like the left side of one and then build it, and then build the right side of the second one, and then try to get some interesting paths between them. So that would make them a little less recognizable when they come up, even though I kept a couple of the symmetrical ones in. I think this one stayed symmetrical when I brought it in to Lost.
I'm laughing because it's it's reminding me of my own work, and I use a lot of symmetry in it. And I was working with my boss, and he kept giving me these comments about, and we kept batting heads, and I couldn't figure out why. And then one day he's like, "I hate symmetry." And I'm like, oh, this is why we're having so much trouble.
Right.
All right. So that was the ZX Spectrum game.
That was ZX Spectrum.
Yeah.
It was the first time I installed an emulator for that system. North America didn't have a lot of presence, which would explain why it's frequently referred to with that British Z instead of the Z, right?
Yeah.
But especially, getting into the homebrew scene and like getting into, because there's such a huge homebrew scene for that system and for like the other kind of home computers that were big in Europe at that time. It's made me really excited about a lot of that stuff. So it's really fun to watch that.
Has that all made you consider getting into the microcomputer scene and importing some machines?
Absolutely not. Well, I don't know, because I'm in Korea, and there's this Korean, because like a lot of the systems and consoles at that time, they were licensed through Korean publishers who then renamed them and stuff. And there's this Korean version of the MSX, which looks beautiful, and it's just this amazingly gorgeous little machine that, it has very few games. None of them I would probably want to play, but it's this pink and white machine, and I'd love to have it hooked up to a TV, even though I'd never use it.
All right, we're back again, and let's take a look at Lost Adventure. MT, you ready to go?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this kind of picks up right after Second Adventure, right?
Right, I guess. What do we have chronologically? Maybe the season's a little different. I'm not sure. So we had the other ones take place at like a New Year's festival. I kind of always imagine like a Lunar New Year's, but here they're like some mine entrances are thawed out. Figured I'd throw in my, environmental awareness and global warming or whatever. Global warming. So we got mine entrances thawed out. So basically, instead of like looking for gold for an event to raise money to like buy the fireworks, they basically just found a new place and now they want to go check it out. So now they're kind of exploring for exploring's sake. Mostly though, that was just an excuse. I wanted some type of visual thing where it would be, immediately visually different, but without me having to like make new graphics. So I decided to go with kind of a winter theme. And I hadn't anticipated how much of a change it would have required to these mines. So, I've got like rim lighting. So like the edges of the ground is lit. And I hadn't noticed that like the very particular way I set up the tiles for Second Adventure, it only required, it required a lot fewer than normal. So what we needed here is we needed custom tiles for the top of a metal tile, where you can see like the snow kind of packed in. Where in the other one we just kind of had like 4 dark ones and 4 light ones. So then like the ones that are light in Second Adventure on the top, they're also the ones for the side. But if we use those for the side, then we have these like repeating layers of snow in this one. So we ended up having to make new graphics for those and a bunch of new meta tiles for like where they touch each other and corners where the snow is packed a little bit on the side. So I didn't anticipate that. If I had, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm glad it turned out. It turned out pretty nice. It's nice to have kind of a winter theme without like ice physics or anything really wintry gameplay, So
yeah, ice physics kind of people take it both ways. Some people really like that, and some people don't.
Right. It'd have to be really intentionally put in. And that was something we didn't want to we didn't want to take the time to intentionally like expand upon what the game is other than just more levels. Yeah. Like the biggest change that we have is now the stalactites use a different palette, so they're officially icicles. That's it. They're recolored. Now they're icicles, no stalactites.
This is like when you're playing, it's kind of like the perfect companion to Second Adventure. Like you were saying, it's kind of like a continuation of it. It shares a lot in common, but offers new challenges and.
Right. I'd watched so many people play Second Adventure because it's been streamed a lot. There was stuff I just really wanted to do. Some levels I wanted to get in, and then I wanted to get versions of all the ZX Spectrum levels. Like this is definitely one of those here. I wanted to get versions of those all put in. So it was more an excuse to do some fun things, and a few key choices made up front made it easy to vary things. Like the mines and the tower, gameplay wise, they're different because of starting position, but also because of like the sides and bottoms often being open in the tower. So bringing in the turtles to the mines, which the turtles in the previous game weren't introduced into the towers. So having those come in the mines offered a lot of variety in like the mine type stages that we wouldn't have had before. And then similarly, having the stalactites or now the icicles. Oh, here, I love this screen. This is it. This is probably like my favorite piece of pixel art I've ever done. I like that boat.
Yeah,
There's
that's pretty cool.
in the background. I don't know. I just want to talk about how much I like my own stuff.
So this is what you're talking about the theme. You have some flurry starting in the tower.
Yeah, we have the snow coming in, and I don't remember if I had mentioned it or if Lucas had mentioned it, but he had previously created the snow code for one of the Dizzy projects he was working on, if I understand correctly. And it had these, for for that project, it had kind of these larger, like, real geometric shaped snowflakes.
Yeah.
And I went with these, they're just circles of varying size. And luckily we already had kind of a light blue in our palette that we could pull and use for the snow. So there was no worry about that. But I like it. I didn't realize how much it would affect gameplay, but watching people talk about it while they're streaming, a lot of these busy stages, it's kind of like what do you say, your peripheral vision or whatever. Like you're kind of seeing things out of the corner of your eye, and I had heard someone talk about how the snow brings in like a noise to using like the corner of your eye, so you're not as easily seeing the movement of other things.
I could see the criticism. That wasn't an issue for me, but I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority.
I'd say, kind of in the lost levels, Mario lost levels or whatever. An expectation for it to be a challenge for the people that played second. I think it's welcome if it does add difficulty to it. Up here on the top left, we've got the small group of icicles. Something we hadn't done in the first one, grouping them together like that. And I really like the ways they can be interacted with. I didn't anticipate they'd be as fun to play with, but they're quite fun. Like, you can run like straight across, and the time it takes to run across, it gets you under those little platforms. And trying to get that turtle broken with it and whatnot. It's good. Some of the enemy placement, though, I didn't take as much time to refine these. Like, I don't really like how uncomfortable it is to jump up on that double rat platform from the right there.
Okay.
This stage is just so busy. There's so much stuff going on here and so many things to watch out for. And I think it's just busy enough that I no longer find it fun to play myself, but hopefully some people out there do. And this is also one of the ZX ones, but it didn't have like projectiles and stuff, so it ends up a lot more complex when we're adding the other stuff in.
I guess what you're saying about the projectiles and being a little bit more busier, it's kind of in the vein of the later levels of Second Adventure, where you start to get a lot of this. And
then I think maybe like, these projectiles are blue, like that light blue, and then like the tower's that light blue, so there's less like color contrast too. Oh, this one was fun. I had the layout done and I didn't know what to do with enemies, so I was just like, let's make a rat infestation. Let's just put as many rats as we can on there. The rats actually have kind of they're like the least forgiving hitbox out of all of the enemies. Not intentionally, they just kind of ended up that way. If anyone played this earlier, because we released this one, what was it for? This was first released for a blind race. Quite early. Maybe the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019 or something. I don't remember. Oh, wow. I should have checked notes on this, but we had a blind race set up from Second Adventure speedrunners, and it was like the Cove who would run it at what's it called, Games Done Quick and stuff, and a few others like Sir Phobos, who's now the leader, and like Biddy Kong, who would later run it, and I think one more. I think we had 4 people running it, and it was kind of soft release for that. I just kind of like released the ROM on the Cove's like Discord channel, and it floated around for a bit there, and then later we what's the new name of the homebrew player challenge? Leaderboard.
We played the homebrew leaderboard competition.
Right.
I think it was called competition. And this ended up being, originally we were going to play Second Adventure, but you timed the public release in a way that we could use it.
Oh yeah, because we had like Action 54, Action 53 Volume 4 would come out right before then.
Yep.
So this is also on that. So anyone who had played the earlier versions or there would be playing with slightly different graphics in this one, because we didn't really put up the itch page. Like the itch page was kind of a placeholder, you know. It was a non-public link, and I went through and because there are a lot of characters in this, 10, I think, like four pairs, and then the 2 main characters, and I went through and masked them all up. Normalized the idea of wearing masks. Just bring it in like so it's just as normal as a shirt. I don't know. I like mine, which, you know, I'm wearing them on here on the videos because this is a classroom, so there'll be students in here later today. But it was interesting and fun to try to get the masks done at that pixel size. Like you see, Kaylee's got hers on there. I couldn't get the ear straps because they'd be too thick, and then like. You know, one of the unlockable characters is Cheryl from was it Mohan Twins games, and but when she's wearing her like Espinete or Espatine, I forget. One of them is the official name of the Sesame Street character, and one of them is the consonants reversed for their character. But she's wearing her mascot outfit, which has a snout. It's like a long snout. So then trying to come up with a mask that would go on the tip of a long snout. Oh, that chandelier. That chandelier was infamous in the blind race. It took a few people out a few times, and
oh yeah.
I figured, you know, if I'm gonna put it somewhere in a game, I'm gonna hide one right there. Yeah, so that. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Empty.
I was going to say that last screen where you get to climb up and see the characters. That's one of the few additional things we added to it. I put that there because it's cute. I do a lot of what I do because it's cute. So we're up here. I don't remember what I first made that moon for. A lot of the stuff that I do projects for, when I need graphics, I re-pull what I've already made from other projects because I have a lot of unreleased stuff and stuff that I've kind of killed. I think I might have made that moon first for isolation, but then I've also used that moon in this Mesopotamian themed like overhead adventure that Lucas and I were working on for a while. But I think this is the first game it might have been released in. I've had that moon drawn for probably 6 years or something, 4, 5, 6 years.
It's a good moon. You hold on to it and use it whenever you can. Yeah. So we got to the top of the tower, and we're linked back up with, on the left, Blue, from one of your other games, Project Blue. And to the right, who's that?
That's Ling from Wolfling.
Okay.
So this was originally planned to only come out on Action 53. We had actually not intended a standalone release at all. We didn't even do the standalone release until the competitions, the blind race, and then the other competition that we were talking about, just for the convenience of not having to load up an Action 53 ROM.
Yeah.
But because it's on there with these other titles, we included playable characters from the other Action 53 games as the unlockable pair from each difficulty level. What do we have here? It was a little bit of a hassle contacting everyone and getting the okay to use all the characters, but it was definitely worth it, especially because a lot of them weren't 16 pixel characters to begin with, so it was really fun to redraw them in this size.
Oh yeah.
I'm especially proud of how Joe from Streamers looks as a 16 pixel character. There we go, snapshot. Project Blue or Blue, a few of them just needed a few different frames drawn. I really liked drawing Blue from behind, sitting there. I could really emphasize some of the elements of his design that I introduced in the artwork that weren't as heavily shown in the other stuff, like that Jimi Hendrix style hair with a headband tied around it and stuff. So there we go. We've got most of the special things here are just the people that gave me the okay to put their characters in there. So Lazy Cow for Wolfling and whatnot. But oddly enough, I wouldn't consider Blue and Ling to be like the canon characters that you have to rescue. Like if one difficulty level were canon, I'd actually consider that the normal difficulty, or no, the easy difficulty level, which has a new character created for this game as the character that you rescue, and it's AE from the ZX Spectrum version. I had started at first by taking that ZX sprite and then adding like some shading to it, and I wasn't really digging the way it was turning out. It looked cool, but like stylistically, it was really different, you know. And and I think Lucas had suggested, he's just like, well, you know, it's based on a dude. If you want to talk to the dude, and sent me a photo of him, and you know, I think I did him with his hands in his pocket and this like little hoodie that flaps in the back when he runs. But that would be like the canon character that you're rescuing, and all the others are Action 53 characters. The Ace difficulty level has Nim and Nam from Nim and Nam. My absolute favorite. I don't know.
I was gonna say
homebrew game for sure.
You said multiple times that is your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I use my Nim portrait illustration, my piece of fan art there or whatever is my icon on Discord. But I did those, and that was really fun because they're a lot larger than 16 pixels. But Krill has some 16 pixel characters in that game, so I was able to like take their body from like the little goats and like shrink the heads and redraw them and stuff. But in terms of like unexpected work that Lost had with it, so you know, we had a bunch of like character skins in the second adventure, but I actually share and reuse a lot of sprites in the meta sprites. So like, you know, like a piece of the head might be reused in one frame as well as another. And we ended up having to entirely redo that because, you know, I need like first player, anyone with long hair had to be first player because Kaylee had an extra tile for her hair to like lift up as she's falling. But second player didn't have that. And one of them, so Justice has a side part. So when he sits on the ground in the ending, he is asymmetrical, but Kaylee is symmetrical. So any asymmetrical character had to be player 2. Any character with long hair or something that flapped had to be player 1. And then the run cycle didn't work out when I really wanted to get in Nim and Nam. They have that like, you know, that run cycle, that like animal run cycle, you know? But with like the run cycle of the other characters, that didn't work. So we had to just entirely reassign all of the meta sprites for the player characters, and that added like 6 weeks or something because of our schedules and whatnot. But it added a lot of time that I wasn't expecting. To make up for it, that's why Nim and Nam are the hidden characters in Ace, because I could just copy them, palette swap them or whatever. Originally it was going to be Jizya, the second guinea pig from the Grunier series. I have a couple of frames for her drawn at that size, but I was tired. I was tired and just copied Nim to Nam and was happy to leave them in there.
You talked a little bit about for Kaylee's hair animation, and overall the walking animation is really good.
Thanks. They're simple. There's kind of like left leg forward, left leg down, left leg back, and then I think the head. I have a rotation of the head in these, which I don't remember. I remember because like Blue doesn't have that head rotation in like the Project Blue, and I remember doing a version of Project Blue or of Blue with the head rotation. So that like, what is it? Run this way or run that way, whichever way it is. In fact, when Second Adventure first came out, it almost launched with the heads turning in the wrong direction compared to the body. I didn't notice it until really late, and I had to go in like right before we started releasing them and swap the heads. I had them turning the wrong way.
Yeah, I think, because of the games in the pacing of them and the way you play them, like they're short levels and everything, we really didn't get a chance to kind of dive into some of the deeper aspects. So what do you think if we jump into that those photos right now, and we can kind of look at levels?
Yeah, that sounds good. You can see we can show off a little bit of our work process and kind of the way Lucas and I work back and forth with each other. That'll be fun.
Okay, so we have pulled up here. I guess we'll start looking at the levels here. So MT, what can you clue us in about level design or about the process here?
So we didn't really start with like a real workflow planned out, and it was just kind of pieced together. Lucas would say, just get some levels to me, and I'd ask him how, and he said, however's fine. We used Map Ed Pro or Map Edit Pro. I keep forget from Never Obsolete. Never Obsolete currently working on that fantastic like co-op platformer that he's working on. But we used an old version of his level editor, put our levels together, but it didn't have anything for objects or enemies or anything at that time, or if it did, we weren't using it. So for object and enemy placement, I just kind of charted it out in images and sent it to Lucas, and Lucas just typed it up in text and added it to the source there. So this is an example of what a level would look like when I'd send it to him. It's a screenshot from MapEd Pro. I've got a grid overlaid to it so that we can see where the meta tiles break, and then I've just got enemies with their charts pathed out. The zombies got that loose chart there. That's just kind of showing like my anticipated, because at this point we hadn't had like the gravity or the walking speed for the zombie wasn't in. So, we didn't know like how fast he was going to fall when he was moving. So I was kind of showing like, I kind of want him to, by the time he gets over this one, make it to this next one before he goes down, to kind of control the speeds and the gravity there. This is my favorite level in the game. This is the one I was talking about earlier that's the second stage from Donkey Kong, mirror imaged. Yeah, this is it. And I guess speaking of gravity, I really should have mentioned it earlier. You talked about like the Cowlitz games having these really tight controls and everything. And when I had put it together as kind of a pitch, like Bubble Bobble was a big influence, and other earlier titles. So I had kind of anticipated this like kind of slow and like floaty jumping, which
okay.
Lucas was just like, I don't think that's fun, and he put in these fast jumps and this fast gravity and stuff, and it caused us to have to cut a couple of stages. But overall, I think it really helped the game. Like the game absolutely would not be as fun. It definitely wouldn't be the same game at all if it had that slow, floaty jumping around. Especially since the game lacks combat. Like Bubble Bobble has some type of combat, so like there's something else to have fun with.
Yeah, I'm surprised that was his reaction, because the first adventure, when you said slow floaty jump, I'm like, oh, that's like first adventure, but I guess you meant even floatier or slower.
Well, I guess I had that because he asked me, he was like, do you want this type of gravity or this type of gravity? And he had used math words or something, math words that are outside of my vocabulary. But with one, it was like just kind of a steady speed, and with the other one, it increases every frame as you're falling. And I think probably the first adventure would have used the steady speed, and that's what I would have planned for the second one. And he has the one that increases. But it did end up with some really fun stages. There's that one stage in second adventure where like you climb up that grate in the middle, and then it comes out like a T, and you've got these like these two teleporters you got to drop down, and there's stuff you've got to avoid. Like I had planned that to be this kind of drop, like and you're like, as you're dropping, you're like, oh, let's dodge this and let's move over here and let's move over there. And it ends up being this like, oh, I've got to catch this and I've got to catch that. I can go down and do it twice, or like I can really try to nail the angle and get them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And the latter is absolutely way more fun. So I'm really glad that
you still got that in though,
because
if I recall, to actually get the diamond at level, you have to kind of fall like almost like you're going to go out of bounds and then swing back.
So you've got to come in at an angle to kind of nick it on the way down.
Yeah. Okay, you want to?
The way we work here. Let's take a look at the next one. I don't remember what it is. Let's see. Oh, there we go. We talked earlier about the bonus stages. And how they start off is simpler with a lot of gold. So this is what the first bonus stage looks like, or hidden chambers, as we call them in canon.
Yeah.
This is what the first one looks like in Second Adventure.
So I never played this one. If you're playing one player, do you have time to get all the gold, or is it more advantageous for two players to get it all?
Geez, the hidden chambers, I think we keep them at 99 seconds or 90 seconds. So
you can get them all.
It's a ton of time. Yeah, you can just walk up and walk down and jump out.
I was wondering if you were like, because you're talking about Bubble Bobble, I wonder if you were going to try and bring in this thing where like Bubble Ball is like, to gain the most out of it, you play two player, and it kind of rewards you for playing two player.
That ended up being because we planned Second Adventure to have exactly 255 pieces of gold possible.
Yeah.
As we wanted, or just arbitrarily chosen that because we can store it as one byte.
Yeah. FF or whatever.
Yeah. So we'd done that, and I'm real visual in planning. I could have thrown that image here, but like, I have my chart with all my stages, and I've got like my gold circles next to them, so I can like count my gold circles. But then when it came down to the bonus stages, like how many can I fit into each one? So I just counted however many we had for all the normal stages, and then just however many was left, we put in the bonus stages, and then we had to decide like how many shots the enemies that spit gold can get out before they time out and stuff. And I think if anyone can correct me on this, it would be Red, who that's his username,
number one,
right?
number one,
Red, who just like
player.
destroys the homebrew players competition and the leaderboards and stuff. Just these ridiculously high scoreboard. If it's possible to get all 255 gold, we'd have to call a friend and ask him. But I think the most that we can get with just one player is probably like 254 or 253 because of one of the stages where the gold is spitting or dropping, not being able to get the first player to both of them.
Yeah.
But that was unintentional. Well, we realized it before it shipped, but we didn't care enough to change it. But originally, I'd kind of wanted it to be a game that you could 100%, and 100% meant 255 gold, as well as other stuff. But these were just. I didn't want to add a time limit to these because I wanted them to be kind of like a moment,
reward,
reward. It's just like it's all good. There's nothing bad here. The later ones bring in some harm, like spikes and the enemies and stuff.
Yeah.
But definitely not the earlier ones. But this one, most people don't see this one because it's based on where you get your diamonds.
Yeah.
So if we divide 48 stages by 8 diamonds, then that means that to get this stage, you have to have the first 8 diamonds. So you would only see this one if you collect absolutely the first 8. If you miss one of those, then it would automatically go to Hidden Chamber B instead of A.
Have you seen because most of the runs I think you see on for speed runs, it's about speed, and usually they do any percent. But have you seen anyone 100% the game? I think you said no because you haven't seen anyone get all the gold.
Right. I've seen. I think EC Myers. He was streaming his leaderboard challenge attempts, and I don't remember if anyone else that did the leaderboard challenge was was streaming then. If they were, I definitely watched them.
I think he was the only one streaming.
Yeah, I could see him play for high score. But other than that, I've seen a few casual streams, and I've seen speed running, and then they have like a few folks do 100% speedrun category, but they mark 100% as just all of the diamonds. So even when they do that, you know, we'll see these stages, but they jump through them. So like you wouldn't see the turtles spit their gold or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess for people who see the streaming and stuff and then later play it, they end up being like a nice reward, you know, because it's some content that they're not exposed to, and then later they get to see it. So that's nice. Okay, so this stage is the only stage that we cut from the first one that I did not put back into Lost in any form whatsoever. And this was our original last stage for the game. And it would involve, so the red number 1 would be where you teleport to from the teleporter in the bottom right. So you'd start off and immediately you'd have that gold spinner you've got to avoid. Jump onto that teleporter, get up to that number 1, and then you've got these like spinning blades you have to avoid, that chandelier right off the bat.
This is a cruel level.
It is a cruel level. But we have these kind of short, they're like just two metatile tall ropes that you have to jump from one to the other. And again, like almost all the stages were put together before like I had a good grip on the gravity before we kind of decided on it. So with the faster falling speed, this stage I would have considered it unplayable. There are plenty of folks who play games better than me who would have considered it playable, but I don't think anyone would have considered it fun. So I kind of took this out. We do keep that. The little exclamation mark shows where the the diamond is. Yeah, the trigger. I did keep that in the final one, but in the final version, you do have to jump off the edge, but you're not jumping off the edge to death. You're jumping off the edge, and so we didn't have any time where you have to jump out past the tower to get one. So saving that for the last level was real intentional. But again, there's an opening in the last level, so it's a safe jump to try to explore to see which side it would be. Otherwise, it's just, you know, it would have been kind of lame on my end if I were to do it this way, I guess. But yeah, that's that stage. And then it came time to redesign that stage. So this is what my level designing looked like. I had these. I found these notebooks. They're B5 size. For Americans, their B5 is the size that's like it's like maybe 80% smaller than like a letter page.
Okay.
So it's this nice smallish notebook, and it's broken up into grids. It's a graph paper notebook, but the number of grids it's broken up into divided down to almost exactly the stage designs that we had. So it ended up being perfect for that. So I've got a notebook full of this stuff. So I was decided, you know, if it's going to be the boss, let's try to give it a face. You know, the Cowlitz games always had kind of an Oceania, you know, Polynesian loose theme visually to the stuff. So I was thinking maybe kind of a tiki god-ish type thing, but you know, not overtly, just kind of like structural face. You know, it had been carved or built into the top of this tower. So you know, it was just trying to draw out how can I get a face drawn with these meta tiles that we already have, and eventually we get that one on the bottom left there. So
I'm always interested to see people's kind of sketches or notes, and these are really good. But I say that because I'm interested to see, because like they'll always vary wildly, you know. Because like this is, you know, you're using a grid, but basically these are all hand drawings, and then at the end we're seeing the final pixel drawing. So then I always imagine that they're going to be everyone's is going to be very beautiful, but some of them are very draft like, and
Right.
which is good. Whatever you can do to plan, but it's always interesting to see, you know, the difference in people's development sketches.
Yeah, I'm not much at all of any type of like art collector or really any collector. But you know, if I had the money and the one set of pieces that I would be shooting for would be those official Nintendo name table pages. You know, there's like the Zelda ones and there's the Mario ones and stuff.
Yeah.
They float around a lot. They're gorgeous.
You shared,
that's exactly what I would want. That's it.
I think is that what you shared a blank one basically is their template.
I did. Yeah. So they, you know, those got released in some interview in the early 2010s or something, where they were revealed, and then definitely like I made my own version of them. I know Nicholas Bateau. Sorry, he made his own version of them, and his is really good too. Highly suggest anyone go download his asset pack for NES planning. But then when Mario Maker came out, like Nintendo UK or one of the, it wasn't North America and it wasn't Japan. I think it was UK or EU. I don't know how they divide their stuff up there, but they had released, you know, that official image. They'd released a PDF file of that official like Nintendo name table planning page, and it had been up for a long time when I finally stumbled across it. I was like, oh snap, let's share this. But they're fun to work on. But you know, I much prefer a smaller size, like these small ones. You know, they're about this big to get out these levels, so I can get them out kind of quickly. I've got pages of Gruni's Ursa 2 and 3 done in this notebook, and the Cowlitz games both done here. There's what's his name? John Robot, is that right? John Robot? Nintendo Age user?
Yeah, John Robot.
Yeah. So
no, wait, James Robot.
James Robot. There we go. Yeah, James Robot. So James Robot, you see this, you got to DM me, because I've been meaning for like 3 to 4 years to send you these pages. That's my message out to you. When we did the original high score competition for the cover art, had very little interest, and he was absolutely the most adamant and put in the most attempts and was the one person that was like really into it. And I've been saving these pages in a little manila envelope to send him, and I've just been lazy about it. I've already got his address from postcards and stuff. So.
Well, now you know
they're coming to you. Yeah, one day.
And now you know if he watches this.
Yeah,
real fan.
If you watch this, send me a message. Yeah, especially if you're this deep into it. We're a couple of hours into this video by now, right? So if you see this, you get it. If you don't message me, you don't get it. What can I say? Yeah, only real fans get them.
I'll put in my request now. If he doesn't collect it in 90 days, I'm putting in my request.
Yeah, there you go. Make sure to not release this video for 89.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this was the mock-up that I sent Lucas. You know, I said that while I was working on the cover art, I couldn't help but be like, oh, what would it look like if I were to redesign it and everything. So I tried to get everything from First Adventure into this one, and you know, I'd already been like, oh, it'd be cool if we climb up from the bottom, and then it'd be cool if we have to climb out the top, Lode Runner style. Lode Runner's big influence here. I'm a huge Lode Runner fan as well. You know, I redesigned the teleporters. I love, like, I don't know, my love for these teleporters is high. It's irrationally high. My love for this game series is too high, but you know, considering it's stuff that I made. Like, I really liked like Lucas's design. It's this little square pod, and you like stand on it and you teleport. So when I was doing the cover art, we'll look at that later. When I was doing the cover art, I was like, oh, what would that look like? And then after I did the cover art, I'm like, oh, what would that look like if I were to do that in pixels? And it turned out so cute there. And we can see you know, in First Adventure, the blades were the spinning blades were 4 blades instead of 2. I had these, and when I did this mock-up, I was just like, dude, it's going to look awesome. 2 blades are going to rotate clockwise, and 2 are going to rotate counterclockwise, and it looked terrible. In animation, it was horrible. There's just like, it just looked like it was like this because of it. Yeah. And better animator could pull it off, but I couldn't, so I just cut out 2 of the blades. We can see here that I had already pitched one more enemy. I had pitched the beetle. So the beetle is the one new enemy that I was like, oh, I think a beetle would look cool here. And most of my original enemies here are just they're like my versions of Mario enemies, and they're most of them came from Pyronaut actually.
Okay.
So I had this
you worked with Optimon.
Yeah, Optimon, Chris Lincoln, who later would release Raleigh. I worked with him on Pyronaut, which was this elaborate Castlevania 2 ROM hack that he was total conversion, rebuilding from scratch as this like space explorer thing. And it's beautiful work that he's done. Absolutely, one of my biggest regrets is killing Pyronaut by joining it and then leaving it. But I had a lot of enemies made for that. So when it came time for stuff like this, I'm digging through those folders and I'm like, oh, which ones would be fun? And one, I had this, the Parabeetle from Mario 3. I had this kind of version of a Parabeetle. And it had this like rhino horn on the front. It still had the wings and stuff. So I nixed the wings and I put some ladybug spots on them. And I was like, it'd be cool if it were like a Metroid style crawl around the thing. So that's
and that was your illustration was your social media avatar for a while.
Oh yeah, I think I used that on Video Game Sage.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one I used there. Of the manual illustrations, I really like how that one turned out. I got this like kind of opalescent coloring going on with the shell, which I don't normally do stuff like that, and it turned out nice. But yeah, creepy little thing there. The other ones that are Mario inspired are the turtles. Obviously, I've got flying turtles,
Yeah.
And I had done this mock-up. I should have included it here, but it's fine. I had done this mock-up. Years ago on like romhacking.net or something. There's this Mario ROM hacker, W7N, if I remember correctly. I might not be. He had messaged me and he was like, hey, do you want to do graphics for a Mario hack? And I was like, not really. And then, a day or two later, I couldn't help but think, but what if I did?
Yeah.
So I drew how I would do Mario. And I was just like, this isn't a pitch, but hypothetically speaking, if I were to do it, I'd do it like this. Yeah. And I had these turtles and I had the flying turtles with the like kind of the dragonish wings, like the bat wings instead of, I say bat wings, but those would be arms. I guess all wings are arms, aren't they? I don't know. But, sticking to the dragon wings. Yeah. I guess if we're going to have a wing that's not an arm, it's a dragon wing, right? So those dragon wings sticking out of the shell. And I think the turtles came out far enough away from Mario turtles that I had no concern about them. Like I was now satisfied. Like I had this really neat looking sprite that I wanted to use in something, and just threw it in my folder. And when it came time to work on this, I'm talking to Lucas. I'm like, hey, can we add some more enemies? And he's just like, yeah, go ahead, anything you want. So I was like, oh, cool. Let's have this one that flies and spits fire, and let's have this one that flies and drops eggs, and let's have this one that crawls, and let's have this one that has gold stuff.
And he kept saying, yep.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, oh, that sounds great. I'll do it. And then, I'd spend 2 weeks revising the sprites, and I'm like, okay, here they are. And then, later that day, he'd send me back a ROM, and he's just like, does it work how you thought it would? Usually I'm just like, better. It works better. But yeah, Turtles and the Beatles, they were both kind of my Mario knockoff stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, so here, I had already done all the mine stages, which I made that mock-up while I was working on the Cowlitz First Adventure arc. And, we got the okay from John Hancock to use the Cowlitz name for the second one and everything. And, you know, it was kind of like, okay, great, we have a plan now. In like 6 months, let's start working on it again. So there was just this long delay where we didn't work on it at all. And then when I finally came back to work on it, I made all the mine stages and I did all the platforming research I talked about earlier. I was charting out the stage, and you can see here, I'm already at the top of the tower. And because of the palette, we can see that palette there. And I realized I had never taken my mock-up and put it in the game. And that mock-up was made for the mines. So like a lot of stuff didn't work anymore. So this was me taking that mock-up that I just put together and then making it work for the towers. It ended up being one of my favorite stages as well. I really like, here, the switch is not there. So here, this is showing the switch is in the middle. This is just erroneous. It was never intended to be in the middle. The switch is obviously going to be, no. So I had originally intended for, because we can see there, the switch had originally intended to be in the middle here, and then that teleporter on the right. But then later we replaced the teleporter with a cannon, the little cannon pot that shoots the fire up. And then put the switch on top of that. So, having that real intentional set over here, and that cannon's just shooting, and it's shooting at nothing, like that would be kind of a death drop, but it's sitting there and it's calling to you, like it's obviously being like, come check me out, come check me out. So I really like that stage, and you kind of have to time your drop well, and the rat's chasing you. And when I watch people do it, when they try to do the all diamond speed run challenge and stuff, like, I can see sometimes they're like, I got it, like getting that kind of like that emotional response from a player, even if it's a brief one. It's really like, it's a really warm and nice feeling. Yeah, so that's this stage. Okay, so this is the original cover for Cowlitz Gamers Adventure. I definitely wanted to just, I wanted to take the simple pixel art and just push it as far as I could, and keeping the same kind of representation. I did a version. There's a sketch somewhere where the player character is kind of this like red blocky thing, like the original pixel art, but in 3D. I didn't like the way it was turning out, so I went with this Adventure Island type thing. Again, I was saying kind of Oceania. Is that it? Is that the pronunciation?
Sure.
That going with that kind of feel, kind of like Maui and Moana, getting the tattoos on them and stuff, and I just want to be like, okay, so what would make him red? And oddly enough, my headcanon for this is that he's like fantasy red, like Smurf blue. He's like Smurf red, or Snork red, I guess you would, right? They're probably red Snorks. But then the whole image is in this really light palette. Yeah. And when it was finally finished, I realized that he just looked sunburned, and I kind of like the idea that he looks sunburned. He's running around in those little cut off jorts, and he's got those cowrie shell necklace on and stuff. He's obviously hanging out at the beach, but his skin tone is obviously not intended for hanging out at the beach, and he's got this sunburn, which, as a ginger myself, I spent a lot of time sunburned like that. So I like the way that turned out. We can see in the bottom left there the teleporter, and the design for that. Just like, I got really into that. There's a code in the game you put in on the title screen, and it tells some message about. It has a hidden message about another game Lucas was working on at the time. I think it might have been Electro Body 2, which we talked about with Chip Jockey. But if we zoom in real far on the teleporter, the little display screen on the teleporter has the code and arrows there. So hypothetically speaking, if anyone had looked closely enough, especially because it's got a poster print, I try to make sure all my covers get a poster print. You would see it probably on the poster print there. Or is it? No, geez, maybe it's not anymore. Okay, no, I'm totally wrong about that. I had built it. It was drawn like that, and probably I cut it because it looked bad.
Mm.
That must have been it, because this was
Is it
2015 or 16. I did
is
this.
it on the manual? The line art manual? Because the manual is not colored.
No, probably not.
Okay.
But if we can track down whoever has the original cover art, who bought it at the Cowlitz auction, it might be there. I don't remember if I drew it separately and put it in, or if I drew it on the original.
James Robot calling out to you to track down the poster so you can get the code.
Yeah, which we auctioned the original. I guess that comes up later. We show the original art later here. I had fun working in. I absolutely have to call out. Geez, what's his name? Campbell White is an artist. He's Australian. He runs this art studio for kids and stuff. A comic artist, but he was doing this hand-drawn isometric video game art sometime between like 2011 and 14 or something, and I loved it. It was the first time I'd seen like isometric view done in a hand-drawn way, and I hate working in perspective. So I was just like, I was itching hard to try to draw on that Campbell White isometric hand-drawn thing. And so that's where this came from.
Turned out great.
It turned out fun for sure. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it.
It adds kind of like I don't know if we mentioned this prior, but the difference between the graphics in the game, it being like the 1K side going for something more minimalist, this adds a visual to it, kind of like what Atari games sometimes did.
Right.
It adds a context for your imagination. So this is a great for it because you get to see, something that you could bring it to the table as the player going into it after looking at this cover, this feeling to the gameplay.
I appreciate that. I've written on it before, and that type of cover art is divisive, to say the least. Yeah. But I like the idea that whatever world is being represented in the game can be represented through multiple lenses or views.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the same world, but the canon world that we're seeing is not what we're seeing in the game. The game is one lens or one view of it, where even the cover art wouldn't be the canon world. It's just a lens or a view of it. And then the canon world is this like kind of platonic idea of the world that exists in each player's mind as something.
Yeah.
So that's why I've never had a problem with like Mega Man 2 cover art, Mega Man 1 cover art, those kind of real off model cover arts, because I guess being exposed to them as a kid and really liking them, then when I was playing the game and the game was different, and then I was watching like Captain N, and Mega Man on Captain N was different from Mega Man in the game, then my idea in my head was always just like, oh, there's this Mega Man world, and there's all these different ways we can see that world instead of like different versions of things existing. So I like to explore those ideas some with my own work, but mostly it's just indulgent. I said I started doing MT work because I wanted something different from what I was doing before, which was targeting storybook type stuff. And I wanted something I could throw a lot of detail into, that I could just draw for fun and have fun drawing all this stuff. And it was for charity. No one was paying me to do it. Had total freedom. If it turned out terrible, whatever, then charity still gets their money. And I still had fun making it. And, my real name wasn't on it. So, there wasn't the pressure of it being like something that would be coming up if someone were Googling me to hire me for other stuff. And so that's it there. So while I was, after I'd pitched the mock-up, immediately, I was still working on the first cover art. So I was just thinking, oh, it'd be cool if this big place in the middle where the illustration is a 2. And then I just forced the game's title to make that work. So I think I'm becoming slightly notorious, and it's slightly maybe an understatement for the games I'm being involved with, having long and complicated titles. With what do we have? Action 53, Volume 4, Actually 54, and Cowlitz Gamers Second Adventure.
Yeah.
What are some other ones? Grunier's Ursa 3, The Great Cavi Cleanup.
I'd even realize I had a subtitle.
Yeah, and we retroactively gave a subtitle to Grunier's Ursa 2 after we made Grunier's Ursa 3 and updated the ROM, so it's now The Great Cavi Rescue. But yeah, I wanted this big 2 in the middle, and I really, as I was working on the packaging for the first one, like my biggest emphasis was just I wanted the packaging for the 2 to be similar, to be a set. So, the first title was the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure with no apostrophe on the S.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking here we'd have the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure 2, but then Adventure would need to be above 2 or it wouldn't read correctly. And I wanted the same layout. So then it was like the Cowlitz Gamers Second Adventure. But then it's like grammatically it'd normally be the second Cowlitz Gamers Adventure.
Yeah.
But then if we make gamers possessive, then it's like the Cowlitz Gamers Second Adventure. So, maybe folks haven't noticed, but officially the second and third titles have an apostrophe after the S, and the first one does not. So that's why.
I've noticed.
So this cover art would work. Yeah.
Only when I was typing up notes for this, and I was referring to all the documentation out there. I'm like, oh wait, there's no apostrophe.
Yeah, so it was this was a fun one to make. I spoke before, I don't know where. The VGS interview on Project Blue. I spoke before on how in the last handful of years, like half a decade or so, I've been really pushing to get away from my low saturation art training and trying to get more comfortable with colors. So we can tell that there are more colors here. The background has some more color to it, but I didn't want to make it so vibrant that it wouldn't look good next to the other one. So we've got that. We've still got that isometric perspective, that Campbell White inspired perspective there. Kaylee, we put in the lead on the second one instead of Justice. Kaylee, the new character for the second one. So we've got her kind of more prominently displayed. Justice fit in there. Slightly different coloring style in these. It was fun. It was another just really. So these are the illustrations of Kaylee and Justice. Justice on the right, we can see. We can see his illustration came from the original sprite, and then later the in-game sprite. Oh yeah. It was dark in here because I hadn't turned on the lights. Okay, lights are on now. So Justice on the right, his sprite was based on his illustration. Kaylee, though, I was working on her simultaneously. One wasn't based on the other. I wanted something that would fit stylistically with the new sprites and the illustrations there. As many have noticed on her shirt, she has the Justice sprite from the first game in there, which I like that. It's adorable. She has this picture of her brother on her shirt, but it's like that's not what her brother looks like there. So maybe they play the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure as a game, or maybe like it exists in their world somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it was fun. I really liked, especially this, and on the cover art. I liked going through the process of making that sprite look like a faded or vintage silk screen, knocking out some little chunks on it and stuff. The biggest thing that made it back into the illustration from the sprite, which we can't see it in her standing animation there, but it's her bracelets, and I was noticing that with early animations of her, it was kind of hard to see her hands tracking. So the bracelets were added just so the animation would read more clearly. And, she flips horizontally for animation, so I had to give her 2. But she's got these cowrie shell earrings. I say cowrie shell. I actually don't really know what a cowrie shell looks like. She has these generic shell earrings. They go up here, and that's the connection to Justice, who has them as a necklace. So that's their designs there. Okay, and then we have we have all these manual illustrations for the second one. And actually, I really wanted to do this for the first one too, but time was getting away from me. And anyone who has, so the first one had a couple of printings, and one had a full color, like 12 or 16 page manual or something. And the later printing had a budget manual, black and white bifold. So I had to do versions of the images for both of those. But the first game, I just cut and paste the drawings of the characters from the cover art and reuse them in the manual. Where the second game, I did all these manual illustrations for it. And it's fun here. The manuals are the only place where story really shows up outside of that like introductory letter and stuff.
Yeah.
Starting with the first one, which the in-game screen of text Lucas had already written for the first one. So he had already established the fireworks thing, and that the name of the mines, if I recall, were the King Troom mines. So that was it. And I wanted to flesh out their little area. I was giving them that Adventure Islandish theme, so I wanted them to be Pacific Island type area there. And then I was thinking it might be interesting if that king had been like the island had like a period of occupation in its past, and that king is no longer the king there. So they would have been liberated in the last like 100 to 50 years or something, something to where these kids wouldn't have grown up with it, but it would be in their history, and it might explain the mines and stuff. We've got our lingerers, which all these characters have names that I don't even use. No one uses, but I named them. So our lingerers are our zombie type characters, and they're heavily implied to be the remnants of people who had been forced to work in the mines. And let's see, how did I say this? Many have entered the mines before, but few have left. The others linger on, driven mad by gold lust, refusing to let go of our world. So this kind of like dark mirror of what happens of this greed. You're going into these mines to get these gold and to get all this gold and stuff. And I think the write-up I have in the first manual might have implied that they were that some of them might be workers that have been forced to work the mines and then were never able to escape or go free. And so the manual gets a little dark there, and I like that kind of fun contrast. We see that real heavily with Project Blue, But that's it on these, I guess. Most of these names are Korean inspired. Nothing real big on them. Like the turtles with wings are called nalge, and nalge means wing. So it's stuff like that. But the spinning blades, I really liked, which, if it's not visually apparent, I am not a native Korean. I've lived here for about 10 years now. So, the language was new to me when I'm coming over. I'm still learning a lot of it. But one of the things that I love is seeing some of the influence between English and Korean as it changes, as they influence each other, as English influences Korean primarily. But those blades are called MacGybo, and I had discovered that a Swiss Army knife in Korean, like an extremely common name for them, that they would be listed on like a product page if you go to buy one, is MacGybo, which would be a MacGyver knife.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes it really interesting is that MacGyver has no pop culture presence here whatsoever. Like whenever
Where
it would
did
have
it
been
come
big,
from then?
it would have had one in like the 90s or something. Whenever
Yeah.
MacGyver was airing, what did it air, like 89 through 94 or something? So it would have had a presence then, and the name would have caught on then. But then, like, it didn't stick. It doesn't have that lingering presence. Like, in the U.S., everyone knows MacGyver, and we use it for pop culture things. And you're going to MacGyver that together or whatever. And that doesn't exist here. But, they still just like, oh, it's a MacGyver column. You'd be like, why do you call it a MacGyver column? I don't know. MacGyver calls the name of it, right? It's just like, it's a MacGyver knife. So that's just my fun night of that. So those are the little MacGyvers that are flying around there.
I'm kind of in the past in some aspects. Like
coming from a person who collects NES titles.
Yeah. So I have the whole series of MacGyver on DVD, and then I have
nice.
even older. But my wife and I are big fans of Columbo, which was late 60s to 90s. It went a long time. Detective show, which I had to import because Blu-ray never came out in the States. So I had to import it from Japan.
I think that's really common, especially our generation, assuming we're close in age. Because what do we say? If we take, what are you, mid-30s? I'm mid-30s.
Yeah.
So
I'm at 30. It's odd when you get older. Like, how old am I? I think I'm 35.
It's doubly hard for me because Korean age system is different. So I have to give a different number depending on who asks me. But I'm 36. So when we were kids, things like Cartoon Network hadn't yet existed. Or they were like on satellite and stuff. So we didn't have these like dedicated channels for children's shows. So we had Nickelodeon, which was like the one dedicated channel, but then 7 o'clock came by, and 7 o'clock Nickelodeon became Nick at Night, which just showed stuff from like 30 years previous.
Yeah.
So as a result, I think a whole bunch of us came up with this forced appreciation. It's just like we're watching whatever we're watching. It's all that or whatever we're enjoying on Nickelodeon. Like, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And then suddenly it's just like, I guess I'm going to watch Mr. Ed and I Dream of Jeannie. And after so many nights of that, it's like, oh snap, Mr. Ed's on. I think that's pretty normal.
I had like insomnia as a kid, I think, and I watched a ton of Nick at Night. So.
Yeah, my parents put a TV in my bedroom when I was way too young to responsibly have a TV in my bedroom. So yeah,
it would just whatever was on, and it would be like, why am I watching the Dick Van Dyke show or Mary Tyler Moore show at like super young? Move on to the next one. You got more for?
No, I don't have any more here. There's just a bunch of drawings. I had fun drawing a bunch of. And equally indulgent write-ups on these.
Well, it all.
I guess one thing, the bottom left, second from the left, the hidden switches are shown. So this is something that I later regret, is that if you just play the game, there's nothing really to tell you that the switches are there. The first stage doesn't have a visible diamond you can't get to, but I tried to place a switch in a location you would inevitably hit if you were taking a natural path up or a predictable path up. Which would cause it to come out, but I didn't really think that hitting one there would make. I kind of figured if you hit one there, you'd be like, oh, there's one. There's probably one everywhere. I'm going to look everywhere for it. But that's not how it works. But I had this in the manual. So, in the manual, I've got this drawing of the switch that doesn't have any in-game representation because it's an invisible sprite. So I've got this drawing of what the little switches look like in the shadow. And it explains what it is. So if anyone reads this poster before they play the game, then they know to look for a switch. But who would do that, It's just like the manuals exist for the period of time between when you physically buy an item and between when you can play it. When I'm riding home in the car, when I was a kid, I'd read the manual. So I'd know everything before I go in. But if we get a ROM, we're not going to do that. We're grown folks, so we're driving if we're getting home. So can't expect people to read the manual. I know now that a manual exists as something to enrich the experience, but it's not something someone will check out beforehand. So that's what I try to do I'm trying to do going forward.
Well, it brings up kind of 2 points. And one we covered, which was this other layer that adds information or things for your imagination. And this is where you place them. But that brings up another thing. And I was going to save this until later, but this is kind of a natural thing to progress into. Because you kind of just mentioned it, and it's something I wanted to ask you about is you spend a lot of care, attention, and detail putting into these physical items, basically posters, cards, these. But you yourself are much more of a digital person, not collecting a lot of physical things. And I wanted to see what you thought about that juxtaposition between your creative work and then your personal collecting.
Yeah. Geez, there's some layers to that. Let's get into it. The big one we have here, I guess, is that when I was younger, I had a collection.
Yeah.
Early 20s or so, especially around that era. This was like NES games and thrift stores type finds. I refused to rebuy my childhood Bubble Bobble because it cost $19, and $19 was a ridiculous price to ask for an NES cart. Came across a Little Samson one day. Someone was charging $40 for it, and I was like, "Who in the world would ever charge $40 for an NES game?" And now, like, most of the games I release, I'm selling for more than 40. Well, I'm selling. Whoever's selling them, I haven't actually sold anything myself yet, game wise. But it was that era. I worked in a GameStop at that time. We were like the consolidating store for when cart-based systems were being rolled or phased out. We were the consolidating store for the Southeast region. So we got everyone's leftover cart-based systems, cart-based games for, through like Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and everything. They just all came to us. So we had this big thing of them. So I just had first dibs of them, and the prices we sold them for were ridiculously low, and employee discount and buy two get one free and all that stuff. So I had like 400 and something NES carts, and we had my roommate and my girlfriend and I. We lived together, and we had we had like 30 systems and 4 TVs hooked up, and all these like AV selectors, and we were all poor. It's like I've never had money, so they were all secondhand finds and stuff, and it was at that time period where stuff wasn't expensive, so we had all this stuff. And Katrina came around. I was in a Katrina affected area. We did about a month without power and water, and our home wasn't affected, but our landlord really wanted to push everybody out so that they could bring in government contractors that they could charge higher rent to. So we kind of fell victim to that, and I refused to pay for a whole month of rent if I wasn't going to live anywhere for a month, and I had a 2-week gap. So I was just like, I'm going to live in my car for 2 weeks. My girlfriend, she was in dorms and stuff by that time, and my roommate and I, we were just like, yeah, we're living in the car together. We've lived everywhere else together. So we sell everything. We sell it all in this big lot, and eventually things work out, and we don't have a gap in home providing housing. But we'd gotten rid of our collection, and we were already, we'd already kind of gotten tired of it. I don't know how many of your viewers have worked at a place like GameStop, but it's it's a terrible corporation, and their corporate policies and stuff are bad. I don't know. You see that like in my Project Blue work, you see a lot of anti-corporate messaging from me, primarily because GameStop sucks. But I guess working retail, like, it's inevitable. If you work retail, you're eventually going to have some type of disdain for the customer base and for the product and everything, right? So I was hands off games there. I couldn't have been any less interested in it, And a few years later, I leave the country, and I go through these like phases of, you leave the country, I get everything down to one bag. Like all my possessions
Yeah,
are down to
yeah.
a bag. I leave the country, and that felt good. Like that felt really good. And I realized that like material possessions were a big part of they were a weight to me more than
Hmm.
anything. They were an obligation to have. So I don't really like to have stuff. I really like to support people who do stuff that I like.
Yeah.
So I have a small NES homebrew collection that I'm not particularly fond. Like I'm fond of it, but I'm not connected to it, or but I bought it because the people who were putting it out, they were putting out a quality of game at a price with like a quality of packaging. They were doing what I think people should be doing. I don't want to say what
Yeah.
people should be doing. What you should be doing is what you want to do. This is homebrew.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. But they were doing what I would be doing, or what I would want to support. So I'd buy them. So I have a handful there, but they're in a drawer somewhere. That's about it on that. Digital though, digital. When I first came into this, the view on releasing ROMs
Hmm.
was extremely divisive. People who were wanting to sell their game didn't want to release their ROM, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that that places like Nintendo Age primarily, uh, they openly support piracy. They openly support people selling reproductions or bootlegs of other stuff. With these little rules that are like, well, it can't be a counterfeit. You can't be trying to pass it off, but you can make anything else you want and copy anyone else's copyrighted software, and we'll allow you to sell it on the website. And it's just this huge it's this huge double standard, and it's kind of gross. And I say this self-aware because I did get into Nintendo Age, doing kind of these label designs for Bishop Brothers,
Hmm.
who they were doing reproductions at the time. Now I just wasn't aware of it. I wasn't into the scene. I wasn't into the conversations around it. But at that time, I was working. I was working with him, and he's a nice guy and everything. And my big thing was just like these reproductions that were coming out looked terrible.
Yeah.
And I was teaching out of license. I'm licensed art teacher, but at that time I had been teaching other subjects for a while, and it had been a while since I had an art job, and I was getting a little depressed, not having something to do with art. So I was eager to get into it. So I was just like, well, did some work for him, and I put out some stuff, and I did some box and packaging design, and then that's when I discovered the homebrew scene. I
Hmm.
didn't know it existed previously, and I saw these people making new stuff, and I was just like, "That's what I want to do. I don't want to do this other stuff anymore. That's
Yeah.
what I want
Yeah.
to do for." But then these folks, they're selling these games that it's impressive that they make them, and it's expensive to make an NES game, and it's a lot of labor. And I understand, and I say that yes, anyone who does work should be reimbursed fairly for it. But also, like a lot of that Pacific Northwest area, we've got a lot of tech jobs and stuff, and we've got people that are making money now, and they have this disposable income, and I'm not one of them, and a lot of people aren't. And I didn't like the fact that you had to drop $60 for just the experience to play a game. And especially when I started working with Lucas, like Lucas is from Poland, and the NES homebrew scene it's big. There's a lot of folks in Poland, a lot of folks in Brazil, and these places, the weight of their money. How do we say that? Like the exchange rate between them, and like their local like
Hmm.
wage and stuff. It's so different that it's Lucas spent, he and I spent 18 months working on Cowlitz second adventure, but then it gets sold for charity. That's cool. But it's priced at $60 physical only. And minimum wage in Poland's like $500 a month for what I believe to be significantly more than 40 hours. Like that sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
He spent 18 months working on this, and then anyone he would know in his own country, it's just completely out of their, unless they have unless they're in Warsaw and have this big job, it's an unreasonable ask to ask of someone. So I've always been real big on getting the ROMs out there.
Yeah.
And once I saw what happens when the ROMs do get out there, people play it. And people who buy the carts don't necessarily play it, not all of them. But then people play it and they stream it. And they stream it and they share it. And if we take we get up a Venn diagram, right? We have the people who have the setup to stream, an NES, and we have people who buy homebrew games, especially ones who bought them in 2014 or 15, and then we get in people who would actually stream those games. Almost no one, So we'd have these games released, and they'd come out on Nintendo Age, and 6 months would go by and we wouldn't see anything. We'd see our high score competitions, these photographs, it's 1992, the photograph with the TV and the card and stuff, but we don't see any video of the gameplay, and no one else finds out about it. So a release on Nintendo Age was all right, I sold 100, 200 copies. It's amazing. But then those 100 and 200 copies, those are the only people in the world that have it. We spend 18 months making something. I don't want only 200 people to experience it. That's ridiculous. There's 7 billion people in the world. I would like for 7 billion people to play it. But digital release is big for me on that. That's my main reason for it. And then I don't want digital releases to feel like they're playing second fiddle to a physical. So that's one of the reasons why my itch pages take up so long before I release them. And then when I do finally get them out, it'll be this is a temporary page for a while. That means that I'm making something else that's going in that download pack at some point in time. So my download packs they're the ROM, they're the cover art. The cover art's at a good resolution. I'm not worried about someone printing a label or something, and trying to sell it, whatever. If you're going to do that, then you're a tool, but I can't stop you, But then a good resolution cover art. I'm not going to put this ridiculous print resolution because I don't want my download size to be huge,
Yeah.
But it's going to be large enough that you can get in and see the detail and stuff on it. There's manuals going to be in there. It's going to be easy, hopefully easy to read. I'm going to try to make it easy to read, the ROMs in there. And file naming of ROMs is weird. People seem to release ROMs and don't really care what the file name is. I try to intentionally name the ROM so people can recognize it. Capital letters for titles and stuff. I don't know. I know a lot of folks, they don't like spaces in their ROM names because of, web standards and stuff from way back. But, if you need to host something like that, rename your ROM for it. There have been spaces in ROM names since Goodness came out, put spaces in there, put your whole file name in there. Let me know what the name of it is, we can see that a lot. I see it more than I think a lot of others do because I help collect the ROMs for the NES Dev competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
And I see these ROMs there, and they have sometimes the title is a completely different title than the game. It'd be a working title, the game had a working title, and then the ROM comes out, or someone releases a ROM and it's build1.nes, which is cool and all. You release it on forums and stuff, but you can give it an itch page, you're gonna get it out there, you're gonna actually do a digital release, make it nice, make it to where the person who gets the digital release, which $10, I think, $10, the previous argument, in Brazil, Poland stuff, $10 is still big. That's a big amount of money. But without doing the math, I would say comparatively, that's probably about the weight of maybe the $60 physical copy would be to someone in North America or something, US or Canada at least. So I think $10 is kind of a fair price, and it's been the set price for NES ROMs for a while. And that's another thing, like micromages was the big one. Micromages was the really big push. Before then, I was pushing for ROM release. I was like, everyone should do ROM release. Some people were pushing for it, and there was still a lot of hesitation to it. Micromages came out, and they did their ROM release. Micromages is huge. Micromages is an excellent game. And now if you choose not to do it, it's like you're trying to say, like, my game is of a higher quality than Micromages, like it has that feeling to it. So I think that Micromages doing it Micromages doing it and Micromages succeeding to the level that it did put a lot of pressure on the people who are hesitant to do ROM releases to do ROM releases. And oh geez, that brings me back to the early digital releases. We had these gradual games. He did that gradual games. I think it was called Virtual Machine or something, but it's that like Java wrap up so they can release. And that was cool. It was really cool because Steam wouldn't allow ROMs to be sold there. Itch does. Also, Steam sucks. Itch is cool. That's why. But Steam wouldn't allow ROMs to be sold there. And I remember that was allowing some people to release on Steam. But then, that it really gave them that, like, okay, now I'm going to release it in this, and I'm going to remove the music, and no one can pull out the ROM, and no one can play it on their Evercart, and no one can play it on their phone, and no one can play it here, and no one can play it there, and you can't make a copy, and your bootleggers aren't going to do that. Well, if you weren't supporting a website that supported bootlegging to begin with, then maybe that wouldn't be a problem, But so there were only a few releases like that. And I'm really glad that was a short-lived thing. I'm really glad that the ROM coming out there now is a big thing. Cowlitz Second Adventure, I agreed for a year of physical exclusivity for the charity before we did the ROM release. But that was a big thing in my initial agreement. My initial agreement is that we would eventually release the ROM, and John Hancock was like, all right, that's cool. if I had said I'd release the ROM on the same day, he would have probably done the same thing, Yeah. He's real cool like that. He put a lot of work into this stuff for no direct benefit to himself, and I appreciate that.
You brought up a lot of points, and I want to offer, some of my own takes, but also,
please
some context for viewers that are maybe unfamiliar with history or.
I have these conversations like maybe everybody has read all the forum posts for the last 7 years, like I have.
So, some context. So for a long time, like you were saying, homebrews were released physically only. And that was due to a bunch of factors, but primarily privacy was concerned at the time. It was kind of untested, and there was some attempts to see what sale would be like offering a ROM. Some Kickstarters before Microages did offer ROMs, but it was a low percentage of the backing. But it still was a percentage, and Microages came along. It brought a lot of other people outside of the community to support it. And then, like you're saying, that kind of snowballed, and now it's kind of flipped, where I would say there's probably more homebrews that are released digitally or offered digital than there are that are just physical. And that's a great thing because it brings up a lot more accessibility for those things you said, financial, space. Maybe you just don't have the consoles. And we've kind of moved that thinking for, I would say, most developers and most consumers, that it is good to have the ROM available, and we're willing to pay for it. Most people. Naming conventions, that's like one of my pet peeves. Not naming conventions only, but when you're working with a lot of collaborators to have something agreed upon. Probably people can relate to this, or maybe not. In my professional settings, when I put out emails, I put in relevant information in the subject, like some sort of numbering factor, which they may not use, but it's good for me. A title of what project this is, and then a really short, descriptor of what this email is. So one, I can find it later and talk about, and then sometimes I'll get emails that just say has nothing, or it'll be like question. You brought up some other points. I think I captured on some of them. But I am, to emphasize, it's really good that we've moved on to offering digital. Something you're doing that you've kind of touched upon is you're offering high quality things in your digital package rather than just, here's the ROM, got the manual, you're screwed. Which some people do. It's developers. Some will just say, here's just the ROM. You don't get anything else.
Yeah. And a quick note is that the markup on physical stuff, like physical stuff's expensive to make, so they sell for $50 or $60, but realistically, you're looking at $10-ish profit per unit. So like when you're selling a digital ROM for $10 and you're making $10 off of it, and you're selling a physical for $60 and you're making $10 off of it, you're still making $10.
Yeah.
So to the developer or the publisher or whatever, it's going to have the same kind of feel, unless we're working in huge numbers or big discount bulk or something. But it's going to have the same kind of feel on your income there. And then like, especially seeing Project Blue's itch revenue, what's coming in from that.
Oh yeah,
it's significant. It's I don't know how open they are with what they're making on it, but it's enough that any doubts I had previous about it, like any internal doubts I had about it, they're gone. Like that's money we don't have to work for. You don't build the manual, you don't screw the cart together, you don't ship it, you don't go to the post office, you don't print something. That's just $10 you get every time someone gets it. And people pay more for it. I especially like how we did on Project Blue. The digital release for that, it was $10 for it and like all the extra stuff. And then on the itch page, we have all that extra stuff. But then like and I say extra stuff, I mean like extra albums and extra this and extra that. But now on the digital release, like if you buy it, $10 gets you, ROM, manual, cover art, like everything that a normal release would get. And then for like 15, you can get all that extra stuff that the Kickstarter backers got, the Winamp skin and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a nice reward for the people who backed on Kickstarter. They backed at $10. They got what people would later pay 15 for. So they still get a little extra present for them, and that's nice.
The other thing that,
but no, it's mostly like we can make the profit. Yeah.
Yeah. Is Steam versus itch. People probably have their preference player wise, but putting aside the DRM aspect of it, itch is a lot more friendlier to creators, where their fees are flexible or suggested, where you can
you can set a fee at 0. A lot of people just set it at 10%. That's kind of standard. Everyone's just like, okay, we'll set it at 10%. That's like the feel of it. But if you don't want to give 10%, you don't have to give 10%. You set it at 0%, and that's cool. So that's nice too. Also, it was really weird because I spoke about my time at GameStop, so I was like real into the gaming scene, and then I was real out of it for a chunk of time, good handful of years. When I was into it is when Steam had first started to exist, and everybody hated it. Like the entire concept of, I don't even remember, what was it, Valve game or something, Half-Life or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Computer game or something big at the time, and customers were coming in and they were upset. I worked in a rural area that we didn't really have internet connection to most customers and stuff at this time. So the general concept is that everybody hated it, and then I'm out of gaming for 5 to 10 years, and then I come back and suddenly everybody loves this thing, and it still looks as terrible to me as it did before. But no, it's cool that itch gives us an opportunity. So NES developers out there, if you haven't been putting your stuff on itch, put your stuff on itch. It's cool.
All right, let's get back. I think that offered a lot of.
That's my
it was a good segue.
That's it. Yeah. Well, if you want to, you can just like fade out my audio at the beginning half of it, and then just fade it back in at the end half. Just compress it down there. Okay, so there are the boxes. That's what they look like together. Waffle Foot is the person who made these boxes. I have spoken at length about how much I love these boxes. I have for years, everybody who asked me who should be
Mhm.
boxes, who should be doing boxes, I always push him in Wafflefoot's direction. Not all of them work out that way. I know he has a busy schedule because it's not his main gig, but if I understand correctly, he has access to these, like, something through his day job gives him access to this stuff.
Yeah.
And they get printed at like a place where actual boxes, commercial grade boxes
Yeah.
are printed. But they have this like this matte or satiny feel to them,
Yeah.
and they're not glossy, and they fit my art so well, because my art really, it doesn't work well with glossy stuff, the types of colors I use, and I just love it. So I've got these two. I've got Action 53 Volume 3 was printed on these, and I think that's all I've actually gotten of my art printed onto them. But I love them, and anytime I would be putting out something, I would just be pestering Wafflefoot's email and throwing money at him so that he would make them instead of anybody else. I love these boxes.
Yeah, it's hard to pick that in a photo if you've never handled the boxes or seen the boxes in person comparatively to other ones. It's hard to capture that without seeing it in person, and you could tell the difference in the finish or just the quality of it. And yeah, you should be pushing them because they are great quality, and it's how do I explain it? Sometimes some of the boxes some releases get is more like a cereal box than it is like a professional packaging. It's just the paper and the finish was meant for something else.
The
It's
best
not
way I
the
would describe these is they're the type of white material that like an expensive medication would come in.
yeah.
Like if you were to get some really nice Neosporin, and that box that it come out of, it's like this. If anyone wants to see it in action, if you're part of the VGS Discord, if you
Mhm.
do a search in the brewery channel for a post from me that has a video, it might be the only one, unless it also brings up YouTube links. But I at one point in time did a video showing the light and how it goes off there. I think when Matt Houston was asking about them sometime in the
Okay,
last
yeah.
year or two. Then, so if anyone really wants to see it, you can search there and see it. It's
Yeah.
nice. And these are our carts. I see you got I assume this is your collection, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I see you got the clear version of Cowlitz Gamers Adventure. If we zoom in real close to the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure label on the top, one thing I wasn't a huge fan of is that the label's perforated to get that fold down there. Like it
Oh
has
yeah, it is.
little dots cut into it, which getting the spine and getting the end label to stick. Yeah, there we go. So getting the end label to stick has always been kind of a big thing with people that are publishing this stuff, and a big difficulty. So that was their attempt at solving it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's not a big problem.
Yeah, you see, sometimes you'll see a lot of label lift on not this one but other ones because of that bend
Right.
of trying to go over, where it just kind of peels up, or bubbling because of the folding. The one interesting one, and it's a different take on this, and it's what Thomas Guyton did for Alfonso's Arctic Adventure, and it turned out really good. At least for the limited edition, is the front label and the end label are two different pieces, and he has a clear cart, and for the end label he used a clear label with black text. I think it was black, and he used a foil based front label, and
That's pretty cool.
it came out really good.
Is that in your video?
It's not on my video, but
Because I let that video play in audio, so I would have missed it if it had been.
I'll send you a photo, or actually I'll toss up a photo of it in this video.
Let's put it here. Oh, look at this wonderful. Would it be in this direction or would it be in that direction? Look at this wonderful cart. Oh, it looks so amazing. Really, the way you were describing it, it doesn't even do it wonders. And seeing it in front of me now. But no, that does sound really cool. I look forward to seeing it when the video comes up.
Yeah, it's not something that obviously they didn't do that in the lifespan of the NES, and you don't really see that elsewhere. But it turned out great, and it doesn't feel out of place. It paired very well with his other materials he used.
That's another thing I really like to encourage is for developers not to feel restricted by what was done in the lifespan of the NES. You know, like it's a hard thing between, like, you know, you really want to make this stuff and you want to pay tribute to what you enjoyed as a kid, but also, you know, we're grown folks and it's like 30 years later.
Yeah.
You know, like, we can make decisions and we can try new things and we can put out new things. And if collectors don't like it, they don't have to like it. But if they want to support what we're doing, that's what we're choosing to do, you know?
Yeah.
Which that was something, we've got it up here now. The first Cowlitz Gamers Series, I had a manual on. Doing manuals sucks. Doing the layout for them, doing the page layout for them, printing them, cutting them, stapling them, that sucks. It's difficult, and it's especially difficult as a designer from another country, communicating with someone who's printing it in their country and trying to get the prints back and forth. We had a big problem in the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure where the first set of manuals came out and they had these really low resolution prints because the PDF had been opened and printed through something that was viewing it at like a lower grade or something. Like I'd send him this 300 to 600 DPI PDF file, and when he had opened it, it had opened in something that was viewing it at 72, and he printed it from that. It looked gross and it turned out bad, and I felt really bad, especially because Cowlitz Gamers Adventure is not worth $60. Like, you know, it was sold for $60. It's for charity. Charity gets their money. That's a good thing, always. But that game is not worth $60. It's a simple game, you know? And I feel really bad for people who would have paid for it, and then they got this lower quality manual too. Like, that was a big thing. Like, Cowlitz Gamers Adventure wasn't worth $60. I tried my absolute best to make the packaging justify the purchase. And then with Cowlitz Gamers Second Adventure, especially because $60 still feels like a lot to me. It feels like a lot the same way, you know, like that's, even when I was in the US, like that was a day and a half of labor for me, you know? So if I'm going to be digging for a day and a half for something, it should be nice. It should be good. And I know it's a lot more for a lot more people out there, you know, and it's a lot less for a lot of you guys out there too. And that's cool too. Like, once we get there, like, now $60 is a half day work for me. And I feel like I've hit the big time, you know. It's been a half day work for me for a few years, and instead of, you know, a day and a half. And I'd like to blame it on personal growth and not inflation, but still. But when we were doing this, I didn't want to do that manual. I didn't want to do the printed manual. I didn't want to deal with the stapling and stuff. And I wanted to do a poster manual. I really wanted to do this fold-out poster manual. It's a big thing I wanted to do. And suddenly I felt like I needed to justify it. Mm-hmm. So I started digging to see if any commercial release games did. Mega Man 2 for the Famicom did. B52, is that the name of it? Codemasters B game.
It might be. I'm not recalling.
A Codemasters game about a bee. They also did it. No, Big Nose the Caveman. Big Nose the Caveman did it, not B52. Big Nose the Caveman, Famicom, Rockman 2. They did it. So then I was like, they did it, so I can do it. But I realized that was 2 days of searching that was wasted. I don't need them to have done it for me to be able to do it. I knew at the time it was going to be cool. I knew what I wanted it to be. I didn't have to do anything else. That's all I needed. So other developers out there, you want to do something that's cool, do it. Other stuff we see here, we see this this high scorecard here. It was for writing down all your password zone. I see you haven't played the game. If you had played the game, you would have obviously written down all your passwords, right? So you must have sourced that gameplay material, or you never died, which I noticed you didn't die. You played it first time through, no deaths. That's amazing. So you wouldn't have seen any passwords. I get that. That's cool. Congratulations.
That's the one thing, like, as a player and I hate the word collector, but I guess to most people, there's
no weight to it. You collect it, like, especially, you know, I appreciate that you collect the stuff that I make. Like, Like I say that I don't collect, but I do put a lot of work in making the physical product good because I know people do, and I want them
Yeah.
to enjoy it when they get it. And
Yeah.
I want them to collect it.
Yeah.
I see a shelf of my artwork behind you, and that makes me feel good. And I'm glad that you pay money for that stuff. It justifies it justifies all the student loan debt that I paid off a few years back that I went for art training and stuff. Like it justifies that. It makes me feel good about what I'm doing. So don't feel bad
I
about
just
saying you're
don't
a
like
collector.
the term collector sometimes. Because it's like, in my head, it's like a collector just displays things. They don't appreciate them, and then that's kind of the disconnect, because then, like, I play all these games and I enjoy them, and then but anyone that I guess that wouldn't be into video games or retro games, they'll just walk in, they'll just say, "Wow, it's a lot of stuff. You're a collector."
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive things. You know, like some people, they want card only, they want ROM only, they don't care if the manual comes with it. They get it, they want to play it. That's cool. They play the game we work on. That's great. Some people want it on the shelf. They want it to look beautiful. I'm going to do my best to make it look cool on your shelf. Like I'm going to put months into this stuff. Geez, the amount of time I put into Project Blue nearly got me divorced. I'm going to put a lot of work into it because I want it to look good on your shelf. At least I want it to look good based on my perception of good. Like I want to be proud of it when it's done, and I want you to be proud to have it. So So collect it, play it, collect it or play it, collect it and play it, play it or collect it.
The collector in me is why I can't write on this.
Yeah, when I designed this, my internal voice, especially because this was before digital releases were big. So this was when it was real common for folks to buy homebrew. Like 40% of the people who'd buy it wouldn't open it, or whatever percentage it is. So when I was designing this, my initial response in my head was just like, I want you to have that conflict. On the next, do you have a picture of the next one, the back of this? There we go. So in my mind, a collector would want the original cover art. It's like the only thing that I have that's really really valuable, I guess, maybe. But it's the original cover art. It's the only one of a kind thing that exists for it, So I figured a collector would want that. So immediately I'm like, I'm going to want to encourage collectors to write on this thing that comes with it. So we had this high score contest. I even drew a picture for it down there. Show you how to do it. Write your name on this card, put it in front of the TV, submit your high score, and win the original frame cover art. And for like, this contest went up, and for months, James Robot was the only person who entered. Finally, Red came in at the last minute and just destroyed him. But apologies, James Robot. Yeah. Hey, remember, watch this video. Get that other art for it. But that was it. I wanted people to want. I wanted to challenge it, and I think it might have been you actually. Someone was like, "Can we photocopy it? What if I take a picture of it? How would you know? I won't know. I don't know." And I'm not going to be upset one way or the other. I just want to give you that little bit of internal conflict there. Yeah.
This is that good thing. A registration cost that offers or something. So Kahan did that for
to get ET, right? It came out with what was it packed in? It was packed in.
It was packed in Larry, right? And you had to fill out this little card in there and mail it to him with a check.
Yeah.
And that was the only way to get ET.
Kevin's a great guy, but that's the biggest boss move that I've ever seen. That's the thing I respect him the most for, because you have to open your game, and after you open your game, you have to find this, and then you have to take this thing that came with your game that you paid for, and you have to mail it away to never see it again. And that's the only way you can get this other game.
Yeah, you couldn't contact him otherwise to get it. There was no online ordering. Just mail it out.
So there's the poster there. I was a little disappointed. The printers that we ended up using for it, it came out real dark, which it's weird. It was hard for me to source printers because I was sourcing the printers from Korea. So I was calling people local to John, and I was getting these printed at the same time as Action 53 Volume 3. So I was calling people local to where Paul was, who was doing that of Infinite NES Lives, which he was at that time in Texas. So I sent real similar artwork to 2 different printers, and the ones in Texas, they came out beautiful. Those Action 53 posters,
Hmm.
the color is dead on. I love it. These came out dark. It's kind of a bummer, but what can you do? As a digital artist, if you can't print and edit and reprint, you can never really adjust for. You
Yeah.
can't anticipate whatever printer is going to be handling that. So it's still cool. I like that we have every cover art I've done. There's a poster this size of it out there.
Yeah.
So it's out there for people to have. So yeah, there's the back of the manual there. As you can see, came out a little dark, but I really like the way it turned out. But that wasn't my first idea for the manual. So my first idea for the manual was a Candyland style board game. And it'd still be a fold-out poster, but the back of it would be this Candyland style board game. And then the card that would come with it, instead of being a high score card, was going to be playing pieces. And you'd have to cut them down into slices and fold them in this little triangle. I was doing these art workshops for kids at a time, and we were making our own board games like that. And I put this effort in there, and I was kind of planning it out, and all of the context that would be in the manual is in here, and it's a functional board game. But I realized, 1, no one would play it, and 2, I had 22 manual drawings, and I didn't have anywhere to put them. So I ditched this idea. But alternate universe, this might have been it.
Yeah.
As I'd mentioned before, we auctioned off the original cover art for the first one at the Cowlitz Gamers for Kids. What year was that? Was that 2016? I think it was the 2016 one. The expo John had up there. And I don't know who got it. So this piece is sitting in somebody's home somewhere. If you've got it, let me know. I'd love to see a picture of it sitting in your closet or wherever it's at. But I was for this one, I was because I work in ink, and then I clean up a lot digitally, and then I'll color digitally. And I was really worried about the original art being presentable as it is. So everything that I cleaned up digitally in this one, I went back on the original and also cleaned it up with white paint. So this one has a bunch of little touch-ups, and eventually I decided not to do that anymore. I think it's better to leave it as it is, especially because it's not being shown for being the drawing; it's being shown for being a piece of production art. So seeing the drafts is a benefit. So in the second one, I left in all the mistakes and stuff. And so that's the first one, and then the second one here, we've got. This one, as I said, I used for the initiative incentive. I'm sorry, I used it for the incentive for our high score contest. And as I said, I was a little disappointed. We didn't get a lot of interest in that. Not a lot of submissions for that. But later, once really, this is I'd said when you release a ROM digitally, you pick up a much wider audience. So taking on my old terrace at my old apartment in the sunlight there. I always seem to struggle finding a place where I can take a picture of something. But yeah, so I was a little disappointed we didn't have a lot of interest there. But then what was it? So as I had mentioned, the speedrunners got into it, J2 got into it. He had come across it through John somehow, a physical copy. And if I remember correctly, I let a ROM leak through to those guys, but one of them actually they dumped it and shared it for practicing for speedrunning and stuff. And once that got picked up, and then once the ROM was out, the game picked up quite an audience, and it would never have had that audience if it had been physical only.
Yeah.
And then when the homebrew players competition came up, and then later the leaderboard competition through VGS. Once those competitions picked up, there were more interest in it. Games done quick a couple of times and stuff like that. So I believe Red has this with his high score second adventure.
Oh, that's really fitting. He's a big fan of the game and a great player for it.
Oh, that's great. I figured if he wasn't and anyone was wanting it, that'd be the person to throw money at to get it. So Justin, Neo Dolphino, if you need this, you contact Red and start throwing money his way. So so these are the manual illustrations. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Back in like 2013 through 16 or so, when the Nintendo age, like handmade limited editions of homebrew, like that was a big thing for anyone watching who wasn't around during that period. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the way that a homebrew release was usually funded is that first, out of pocket, the developer would like do like 10 to 12 really nice ones. For Swords and Runes, like Bo did these handmade wooden boxes and stuff, and I did the maps for those and stuff. But then the money that was generated from those, which would usually auction off or something like that, would be the money that would be used to produce a run of 50 to 100 normal complete in box versions. So
I believe that's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe at the time on Nintendo Age, the rules were you couldn't do pre-orders. You had
to. So don't pay for anything until it's ready to ship. So then, first limited run to get up enough money for the big run, and then the big run would generate, or the long one would generate whatever whatever you'd make off of it.
Yep.
So I was watching people doing these, and I can't help but think of, what would I want to put in those, and the manual illustrations was always something I wanted to do. I had planned it for Pyronaut, even though, officially we couldn't release Pyronaut. I had toyed around with it for this like Bomberman hack that I wasn't even really planning on releasing, but I had these illustrations that I'd made for it. And it was something I was just itching to do. So when this came up, I definitely wanted to do it. So we've got all these. I cut them out. I think there are 22 of them. But then we didn't really do a limited edition or something. John and I, we didn't even disagree. We just kind of we just didn't really talk about it. We just at some point in time, I was like, yeah, put it in, include it, whatever. It was a charity thing. So the first, we were thinking like the first 22 people that got it would get it. But then before these arrived at John's place, he did the release at PRGE, and he had only made 40 copies. And from what he said they sold out immediately. Like he took those 40 to the table and they were gone before lunch or whatever. And then he made the rest of, I think maybe it got like 250 copies or 100 copies or 100, 200 copies, something like that altogether. I think altogether through its like 3 printings, it got like maybe 250, 300 copies maybe.
Okay.
But he did the rest of that first printing, the ones with the white cartridges, and was selling those on Nintendo Age, and there just wasn't interest. A handful of people signed up, but there wasn't a big interest in it, and but these got included with some of them. I don't know who all has them. So again, another call out there. If you have one of these, you've got something that's nice. Show it to me. Share it on social media. Pretend that it's on display somewhere. Temporarily put it up and make me think it's been there for 5 years. I know John has Kaylee. John said he wanted to keep Kaylee. So he's got Kaylee, and then there are 21 other of these out there. And there are a few in here that didn't even make it in the manual. There's a what do we have? I did a section of chain link fence for the chain link fence, the lattice work, and then I did a one of the just like spikes, just like one of the round spikes, and then I nixed those when I was laying out the poster. It broke an even grid, so they were the ones that were the lowest importance. So I just cut those. But yeah, that's it. Project Blue has these kind of. I had kind of pitched the same thing to Donnie when they brought me on for Project Blue, and I was thinking like include it with a higher tier, the limited tier or whatever. But we ended up with we had planned like 30 of them. We ended up with 42 or something for Project Blue. But like the limited edition was 100 copies, and we didn't want to like split that up and make it more complex. And Donnie actually just asked, he's like, is it okay if I just keep them? He really wanted them. So Justin also, Justin's got a big end. He likes to get my art. I appreciate that. Thank you, Justin, buying my art. But if you're looking for Project Blue manual illustrations, Donnie will be the person to reach out to on those. He's got those. They're like this.
Oh, nice.
But that's it. I like to include art. It's fun. I make it. If not, it's just going to be in a folder in my house and collecting dust.
That's some great diving into a lot of illustration and behind the scenes things that maybe some people didn't see, but for people who are interested, they can also check out. You had some press kits that you included with on your itch page or on the digital downloads. You also look into the included manuals in there, and you also had some notes on your itch page in the community section about development. So anyone who wants to kind of read a little bit more, they can.
As if, what are we at now? Like 4 hours? As if this 4 hours isn't long enough. If you haven't gotten enough information from me, you can read what's probably exactly the same thing that I typed up 3 years ago and put on it. It's there. So enjoy it.
I guess a couple things, and we kind of brought up a little bit, and I'm not sure if we dove really into it a lot. We talked about it in the preamble to this that was unrecorded. But we did mention that John kept the illustration for Kaylee, which is his daughter. The character, so his children are in the games or in name. What was it like to include people in the games that are based off of John's kids?
Right. So when I got kind of the write-up about Cowlitz Gamers Adventure, the main character had been named Justice. I had totally forgotten that was John's son's name. John's son's name is Justice. And I was confused because at the time it was for the children's, the charity that it was benefiting was the Children's Justice Advocacy, if I remember the name correctly. So I just assumed that it was named in connection with the charity. So then later when we were working on CG2 and the charity had changed, John had become connected with a different charity there. When that had changed, I had forgotten that Justice wasn't named for that reason. I was coming up with name ideas for our second player, or who would later become our first player, our new player. And I was looking at Justice, and Justice is a cool sounding name. Historically, it's like what do they call them? Starts with a P, value, hard work. Puritan work ethic. So Puritan work ethic, heavy work ethic. So it's Justice originally as a name from what I had Googled, it was a Puritan name. And like names of virtue would typically be those. So I was looking at like names of virtue and Puritan names as kind of a mirror for Justice. And when it comes to choosing names like that, they kind of have like really undesired like connotations to them. The closest I could get to for a girl's name, we'd consider Constance. But I think, at least the way I was reading them, a lot of the names that were showing up on the girls' names list for these virtue names, they're not really traits I would want to encourage in a modern era. So I wasn't real excited about it, and I'd run it by John, and I was like, "What do you think? What kind of name should we name this character?" And John was just like, "Well, Justice has a sister. His sister's name is Kaylee." And then suddenly I remembered, Justice is named Justice because Justice is John's son, and John has the sister Kaylee, so we named her Kaylee. And they're named after John's kids. Those are their namesakes. Visually, they don't represent John's kids, and that's something that I was actually a little worried about, because I'm making this game and he's making it. He's going to tell his kids, "Oh, you're in it," and then they're going to play it, and they're not going to look like them. But then we had so in Lost Adventure, the characters that you're rescuing, that's an open thing. Like you get the passcode, and we're big and like dial 0022, and then you do it in the password saying you play as those characters. it also existed in the second adventure, but it was an Easter egg because we weren't really advertising it because they were just little bonuses put in for each of us. So if you happen to beat the game and you happen to look at the password on the screen, you would notice it wasn't the same password as the last level. And if you put it in, then it would unlock these new player skins. So what I did is I took Justice and Kaylee, the actual physical human Justice and Kaylee, and I modeled 2 sets of new characters off of them. And it's quite a few years ago, so I'm sure that this is no longer applicable as they've aged. But John said, I asked them if they had nicknames or anything. John said they did. They were JJ and KK. So if you beat it on easy, then you get a password. If you put in that password, then it will load it up and you get a different letter screen and it has those names. And then they are little pixel versions of their actual kids. So that way they can be like, oh, we have our names in there. And they can be like, oh, we're also in there too. I kind of felt that obligation. Like I didn't want to disappoint his kids some way, So that would be, that'd be how it affected the design and stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice touch. I like that.
Yeah, we have what version is it? I don't remember if it's normal or hard. If you beat it on one of the difficulties, you get a code that unlocks myself and my wife.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which myself would have made no difference because I think this might be my first public visual appearance under the MT name. So no one would have known anyway. And then I offered a slot to Robi, and I offered a slot to Lucas, and neither of them were interested in putting in anyone. So we ended up putting in for one of the slots, we put in Archon and Nako, who were the people who were leading ARHN.EU at the time. But they're the people who had Grunio. Like Grunio, the actual guinea pig from the Grunio's Ursa games. So it's them. And so that means that technically the Cowlitz games are in world with the Grunio games. You put it in and they mention Grunio. They're collecting gold to buy Grunio and Ice Arcade. So we have that little connection there. And then we had one left to fill up. And if you beat it on Ace, it unlocks this blown up version of the Cowlitz 1 character. So it's this 8-pixel version just blown up to twice normal size. We see that again with who did Super Homebrew War? Was that was By the Chili, right? Yeah, By the Chili Super Homebrew War, which Kaylee started in that. But he also put in like some 8-pixel characters, like the Micro Mages characters, and blowing them up to twice size. I think that looks neat. So it was nice to do that too.
I'm gonna lead with I guess I try not to lead this question, but I guess I have an impression, and I want to see if this is matching up with, I guess, how you think about it. But from the outside looking in, the specifically Cowlitz Gamers second adventure seemed to be your kind of breakout role in the community, where you got more involved, moving from illustrations into game design. And it kind of seems like this has a special place for you, that you're representative for the series. You talk about it often. You host the itch pages. Is that fair to say? Do you think about this series fondly?
I'm huge into it, and like I'm really proud of it. It was a big opportunity for me because like I said, I can't do it by myself. I tried to get through the Nerdy Nights tutorials for some simpler stuff, and when it comes to programming and stuff, my brain gets cluttered. I have difficulty keeping like a clarity of thought, and keep thinking about other things. I don't handle that stuff too well. So I've worked with a lot of amazing programmers over the years in Illustrator or graphics role, and I think it was Lucas who was just like, he was just so hands off with it. He was like, design whatever you want and we'll make it. And it put me in the position of being the designer, and I really enjoyed that. And I've always been I really wanted, I wasn't comfortable putting it on my itch page, actually. Lucas and I talked about it a lot. He didn't have one at the time. he wasn't at that time. He wasn't wanting a web presence for himself. So it went on my itch page, but I made sure that when you got to it, it's up there. I really don't like that when you shortcut link it. It's like the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure by MT, because it's not by me. It's by Lucas and me and Robi. So I don't like to take too much credit for it, but I am really proud of what we achieved as a team on it. And also, it's my favorite genre. My absolute favorite genre is single screen platformer, single screen co-op platformer exclusively. I love the genre. So I dropped everything. I tried to balance other things while I was working on it, but really just like mentally, I dropped everything else I was working on because I wasn't as passionate about it. I really wanted to get this platformer out there and put my mark on the Bubble Bobble, post Bubble Bobble world, I guess.
I think it paid off, your attention, and then being an advocate. You kind of all of you are kind of associated with the series now, and it's for a charitable cause. It's had multiple games. It's been well received by homebrew players, other developers, speedrunners. And because of the speedrunning aspect, and I guess when we talked about earlier, because of releasing it digitally, it's become more well known, appearing on Games Done Quick. I think you'll see, even though I think it's a very popular homebrew title right now, I think you're gonna keep seeing the popularity of it grow. Kind of like what you're just saying.
Just last week we had I noticed there's a Japanese language streamer who started. He did like a 5-hour stream of Lost Adventure. I don't know if he beat. I think it was Sir Phobos or no, Biddy Kong. I don't know if he beat Biddy Kong's world record on it or not, but he was gunning for it. And I watch every stream anyone does. I don't understand any Japanese, but I watch the stream. I let it play in the background while I'm doing stuff. But especially because Games Done Quick gets restreamed in different languages. So it gets the Japanese restream and it gets this Brazilian Portuguese restream. And I really like seeing the audience that the game kind of picks up. We had our first fan art for that come after the second Games Done Quick, and it's gorgeous. I just wanted to just hire that person to just do the rest of the art so I could stop doing the art for the series. I don't think I'd get permission from my wife to do that, but hypothetically speaking, if I had an independent source of money, I would hire that person to make some more Cowlitz art for us.
So that's interesting. How does that feel for someone to do fan art of things you've worked on or of your work?
It gets me giddy, I get giddy about it. So I have this long-term habit of I've always used just a solid color black desktop wallpaper. And that has been from when I had a Windows ME machine I bought in Best Buy in 2000, and it didn't have enough RAM to also have an image displayed and run correctly. So I had to conserve RAM. I've never had wallpaper, and no matter how computers have advanced, I've always just in my mind I'm just like going to save RAM, no wallpaper. And that one came out, and it was the first time I saw something. I was like, I've got wallpaper. So now I've got wallpaper. So it doesn't sound like a big thing, but to me, it's a really big thing. I've got that set as my wallpaper.
It changed your whole habit. It did make an impact.
It did.
I guess I guess just a question now, and I think it's fairly obvious, but now that we've looked at all the games, we talked about them, you kind of seen your work again. How do you feel about it? Was there anything you would have changed, or as it is? Generally, how do you feel about looking back at your work now?
I think by that point I had reached a level at pixel art to where I'm satisfied with it. if we look back at Pyronaut, the early Pyronaut work I did, even after working on Pyronaut for like a year, then I redid all my Pyronaut art. And I'm satisfied with the level it's at. We went back and we did Lost. A few years had passed, and I didn't feel any need to really update anything. Like I said, I was really impressed by myself. What's a humble way to say that? I was glad that I had improved somewhat, and I could see it with that mid-game cut screen. There's a pretty big difference there to me that I see. And like, I'm not aiming for getting better. There's a certain level that I think is the level that I need to be at for what I need to do. I'm aiming for getting quicker. I'm aiming for getting more efficient, but I'm not aiming for a visual improvement anymore. In terms of what I do differently, I let down a lot of people by taking on much bigger projects than I had anticipated, and I feel really bad about that. Even everything I've taken on has taken at least 3 times longer than I thought. Cowlitz Second Adventure, I thought I'd spend a summer on it. 3 months seemed like a big time to me. We spent 18 months on it.
Yeah.
Grenouille's Ursa 3. I agreed to help Lucas make a game in a weekend like a fool. And we spent 160 days on it, if I could go back and do things differently, I would just not take on these really big projects. Especially for, I see newer developers come in and everyone's got their big, their magnum opus they want to get out, and just, how hard you want to drill into them. Like, it would be awesome if you were to just make something small first,
Yeah.
And that's why I love the NES Dev competitions. I've gotten really huge into like encouraging those and helping out with those and stuff, because I really love to see these. They're either really small and just polished way beyond the level they need to be for how small they are, or they're small and they're like experimental, and it's something that someone doesn't want to invest 2 years of development time in just to see if someone likes. And those are the type of games I'm really enjoying more now. So if I were to go back and do it differently, I wouldn't take on big projects. I'd start with much, much smaller goals, and I'd work from there.
Yeah, I've heard that self-criticism from many developers or artists, that when you take on a lot in the beginning, you run the risk of being burnt out just from the pressures or the scale of it. So I think
Right, and like I've got this, if I put out something next, then suddenly I have this bar I've set for myself. Like I don't want to have that high bar. I want to have a lower bar. I want to come up with a second screen name and just show up back on the scene. But yeah, it puts pressure. Even if it's a hobby and stuff. And what a lot of people don't realize is, even though the OG NES games, they were made by smallish teams. They were made by smallish teams that were paid full time, and that was their entire job. And they weren't. Obviously, I'm sure there were crunch issues and other things like that. But it's a really different thing than when you're doing everything for a normal life and supporting a family, and then trying to get it into. And I want to stay true to my commitments to the community and things like that. But also, you can't let the family life suffer for it and stuff.
Yeah. I guess leading into it, because you kind of just brought it up in 2 different aspects. One about the NES Div compo, and then 2 about the community. And so I guess we're going beyond the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure series now, but generally, you've taken a large role in one, the community being homebrews, whether that's on NES Dev, on Video Game Sage, or just Twitter in general, about putting out information or guides, or even help to other developers or artists. But then on the NES Dev Action series, you've taken a larger role about organizing and helping them, and then putting together the compilations of the games, and then working on box art with Paul from INL, and then with Brad from for the NES Dev Compo. You want to talk a little bit about your role in that?
Yeah, well, we covered it a little bit earlier. I'm a teacher. I left high school to become a teacher. It's been my goal. I've always, as an art teacher or as a writing teacher, as any kind of teacher that any subject I've taught, I always get more pleasure out of seeing my students and their work. Like, I get more pleasure out of helping them make something than I do out of making something myself. And I'm not going to sit up here and be like, my students, the DNS community, that'd be ridiculous. But I do like to help others. And anytime that I feel like I've had some experience or some information or some skill, I'd like to put it out there. I really don't like, I'm not a big fan of homebrew work being done entirely behind closed doors, closed off systems, proprietary stuff. And I understand people invest their time and their money in it, and they want to protect it. So, no judgment there, but like anything that I learn, I would rather share it, because I would rather the overall quality of what the scene is putting out to increase, as opposed to have mine stand out above it. That's something I've never wanted. I've never wanted mine to stand out above. I want to help bring up everything. And I think I've done a little bit of a role in that. Absolutely. A lot of people are bringing in stronger work now. And, just whenever I have the knowledge, I want to kind of help with that. If I made a mistake somewhere, I want to share it so someone else doesn't make the same mistake. Follow these forums for 6 years. I see 20 people make 20 mistakes, and I want to share those experiences so that people don't make the same ones over and over again, so that there's like a community knowledge, but it's nice. I got into the NES Dev stuff in Action 53. I had been hired to create cover art for a project by a client that would have been a large montage of homebrew characters. And I did a lot of research and planning for that, and that project got canceled, and I was kind of bummed out. I had these ideas, so I realized a lot of the stuff I'd been researching into was on Action 53. So Volume 3 was about to come out, and I just took my idea from it, and there it is. I took my idea from it, and I went in and I pitched it to Damien and the group that does that, and they're like, yeah, that'd be cool. and I put that illustration out, and it's a much finer product than what I would have originally been hired to put out would have been. And I couldn't be happier that first one got canceled. I know I wouldn't have been proud if it had come to fruition. But I am proud of this. So then, I felt I needed to do the second one. I was working on these illustrations for the fourth volume and stuff. And I had thought it was primarily held up because it got delayed a lot, and I thought it was primarily being delayed because of me. So I felt pressure to kind of organize everybody and get it back on track, just to make up for my own delays that I had brought into it. Our child had been born during that time and stuff, so it puts, and then there was this big confusion about how many games were going to be on it, whether we were going to have a volume 5 and all this stuff. So we had some stuff to work out there. And anyway, I'd put together that group, and I helped that group, the Discord group specifically, just a Discord server. That's all. I just put it together, and I got the people together that needed it. Because what was happening on the NES Dev forums is, the forums are up. There's not really a clear division of who's involved, who's not involved. So when someone suggests something, there'd be like a long delay, and no one really answers. So then there's this period of like indecisiveness, and we don't know what to do. So we just kind of made it a group and did that, and it helped a lot. And I learned that apparently I wasn't the only holdup there, which was nice. It was a big weight off my shoulders. They're still not out because of coronavirus and stuff affecting international shipping. But they'll be out one day. And then we I don't feel the pressure to illustrate anymore. I did design only, like I did only a design for the NES Dev Compo 2019 carts that we're going to reuse for every year going forward, and that'll get them out quicker. And it's nice, which I guess ties in. I feel I'm removing a lot of the pressure off myself. I feel like I've established a reputation, a foothold. I feel like I'm part of the community, and I no longer feel like I need to, go above and beyond on everything I do to justify my place within it. So I can work more comfortably now, and that means less stuff will be coming up from me. Work on it at a more even pace, and I can be more in this like kind of mentor role where I'm trying to help people get out what they need.
Okay, going back to the Cowlitz Gamers Adventure series in particular, you released Lost Adventure. Any plans for a physical release for that?
We hadn't planned it. It was originally intended to be kind of a motivator for Action 53 Volume 4, which is also a big reason why I've turned down a lot of offers to do releases of the Grüne Jersey standalone. Why we have, definitely not me alone. Lucas and I talk about that. That's where the Cowlitz is more my baby. The Grüne Jerseys are more his baby, And but we weren't planning on it. The only thing I'd really, it'd be nice to get a trilogy box set and slipcase and stuff. But that might be a one-day thing. One day in the future, but it's not a big enough. I'm really big on like the content of the game has to justify the price, and the game's not long, so I don't think it would. But I do know a lot of people would still be interested in it. So I think it being available on Action 53 and it being released for free as a ROM and stuff, if we were to put out a small set, I don't think there'd be a problem with that. We're not restricting it from anybody. So maybe one day. I wouldn't do it if I couldn't get Wafflefoot back on. Wafflefoot, you hear that? You got to answer. You got to do this. No matter how busy you are, if I do that, I'm going to need your boxes, or else I'd have to reprint all 3 boxes. I can't do that. They have to all match.
I guess leading off of that, any more sequels to the series, or is it going to be the trilogy?
We've talked about it a lot. Cowlitz Gamers for Kids Expo doesn't really exist anymore. The group doesn't really do things much anymore. Their website notoriously has been picked up by a forwarder. Don't go check that out with kids in the room. So we wouldn't use the Cowlitz Gamers name on it. We do have an idea that we've been kind of fleshing out that's is kind of inspired by this FDS game called Electrician, and this Action 52 game with like a light. You have this light switch or something, a flashlight. I thought it'd be kind of neat to do, and we might continue using Kaylee as a character. Obviously with John's blessing going forward, but it'd be a spin-off as opposed to a sequel if we were to do anything else. Most of the fun is just brainstorming game ideas. It gets boring when it comes time to stop brainstorming and actually making. So likelihood of seeing it slow, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll see, and I hope something comes of it. That's all I really had. Do you have anything else before we kind of close out and say goodbye?
No, I'm sorry that I had to make this video so short. If anyone wants something more in-depth than what I've been able to provide in the last handful of hours, spread out over 4 wardrobe changes over a couple of weeks worth of interview time slots, feel free to hit me up on any of the social media, which I am very open on all the time. So please play the game, enjoy the game, share the game. If you want to donate to the charity. That was one thing. When it came time to release the game, we wanted to, I didn't want to take money from the charity. So I pushed heavily on them releasing it as the charity group with like minimum $10 to get it, with it going entirely to the charity. But tax-wise, that's complicated, and no one was in a position to handle that on their own personal taxes. So we didn't. So because of that, that's why it's up there for free, which I like. If you go to buy Cowlitz Gamers Second Adventure, it says donate, but it also says if you can't, don't donate. So, if you can, do. If you can't, don't. That's up to you. But do please play the games, enjoy the games. Tell me what's wrong with the game, so if I make another one, it'll be less bad.
All right. Well, thanks, MT. I appreciate all the time, and I think everything you've had a chance to say and offer up has been great.
Thank you. I've enjoyed the soapbox. It's nice to have one every now and again, I reckon.
All right. Thanks, MT. And everyone, you could tune in for the next episode in the future.
Bye-bye.
Bye.